I would like to call this meeting of May 9th, 2025 to order. Thank you to our live simultaneous Spanish interpreters for joining us today. We are also live streaming our meeting. Roll call, please. Ms. Harper.
Ms. Applegate.
Yes, here.
Ms. Kenworthy.
Here.
Ms. Parker. Ms. Reed.
Here.
Dr. Varda.
Please stand and join us this afternoon in the pledge. Is there a motion to approve the May 9th, 2025 meeting agenda?
I move to approve today's agenda as presented in board docs.
Is there a second? From perhaps Michelle?
Second.
Any discussion?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for today's meeting of May 9th, 2025 as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Harper.
Ms. Applegate.
Yes.
Ms. Kenworthy.
Yes.
Ms. Parker. Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Dr. Varda.
The agenda is approved. For our first order of business, we will be convening into an executive session to confer with the board's attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding the board's legal rights and obligations under an intergovernmental agreement for the Arvada Aquatic Center. Is there a motion for the Board of Education to convene an executive session under CRS 24-6-402, subsection 4FI, to confirm with the board's attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding the board's legal rights and obligations under an intergovernmental agreement for the Arvada Aquatic Center?
I move to convene an executive session under CRS 24-6-402, subsection 4FI, to confer with the board's attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding the board's legal rights and obligations under an intergovernmental agreement for the Arvada Aquatic Center.
And I'm sorry to interrupt board members, just because to ensure we're under the right section, and for the record, it's 24-6-402-4B.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Then I shall remove. I move to convene an executive session under CRS 24-6-4024B to confer with the board's attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding the board's legal rights and obligations under an intergovernmental agreement for the Arvada Aquatic Center.
Second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education will convene into executive session. Roll call, please. Ms. Harper?
Ms. Applegate.
Yes.
Ms. Kenworthy.
Yes.
Ms. Parker. Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Dr. Varda.
The board will now convene in executive session, which is closed to the general public. Please end the live stream.
Okay, we are back to our regular meeting. At our May 7th, 2025 meeting, we heard presentations on the following topics: Jeffco Student Leadership Board, District Accountability Committee, Employee Assistance Program, long-term planning recommendations from the 2024 boundary study, specifically the Jefferson Articulation Area, and the board had a 30-minute discussion on topics of interest. The public can watch the recording from the May 7, 2025 meeting to learn more about this content, and you can also visit our board page on the Jeffco Public Schools website. There you'll find a host of information and links to both board docs and our live stream platforms. Now we will proceed with today's agenda. Due to the fact that our regular meeting will take place on May 29, 2025, we do need to take action on one item today aligned with statutory requirements, and we will move into that action item now before we start our study session. So for our first agenda item, it will be to vote on non-renewal of contracts for named probationary staff and to direct the superintendent or her designee to deliver written notice of the contract non-renewal as required by statute on or before June 1st, 2025. Is there comment on this? And I don't see
President
a
Parker,
motion.
is there a motion to approve the non-renewal contracts for the named probationary staff?
Okay, is there a motion on the non-renewal of the named probationary staff as required by statute?
I move to vote on,
Let's pause for 1 second. We have a mistake in the script. If you don't mind, just
Okay.
give us 1 second.
President Parker, is there a motion to approve the non-renewal contracts for named probationary staff?
I move to approve the non-renewal contracts for named probationary staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
I'm always wondering on these, what happens to these, who am I asking, those positions? I understand why they're on this list, but I've always wondered, so, for example, the art teacher at North Arvada Middle School, is this a position that's no longer going to exist at North Arvada Middle School? How do these relate?
I believe with the position, so each position is different. Some of the positions are not being filled because of a budgetary constraint. And so by way of being probationary, they were the first person who had to be released from their position. Other positions are potentially would be refilled with a different posting, but I believe that particular one, that art teacher you're talking about, I think that was a second art position, and so North Arvada Middle School is not able to continue funding that particular position, and so there's a variety of reasons. It could be due to performance management and not quite meeting expectations. It could be due to budgetary constraints. You're welcome.
If there are no more comments or questions, roll call, please. Ms. Harper?
It has been moved and seconded to approve the non-renewal of named probationary staff. Ms. Applegate,
Yes.
Ms. Kenworthy,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Dr. Barta.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Our next agenda item will allow the Board of Education and the public to receive and consider the 2025-26 proposed budget and appropriation. Before I turn this over to the presenters, is there anything you'd like to say, Superintendent Dorland?
Yes, thank you, President Parker. The board will note that yesterday we added an additional document and material here. It is noted as 5/9/2025 additional board presentation content. I wanted to be responsive to the board's discussion on Wednesday evening at your study session related to if, once again, we're adopting a deficit budget and if, in fact, our third quarter and fourth quarter come in a way that looks like we actually are going to be spending more at the fund balance that we've estimated spending in the budget, what's the plan? And so you will see a memo there that highlights what that plan would look like. I want to note, as part of that plan, a couple of things. This month, you are studying the proposed budget, and then next month, we'll be studying the final budget and considering approval of that budget. There are a couple things that we believe we need from the board, and a couple of things that we want you to know we're paying attention to, we want you to pay attention to. And so today you'll see you're studying, or in June, you'll also have another study session for the updates to the proposed budget, which we will take feedback from you today, work on the proposed budget, and bring another version back on June 4th, and you will study that. We also are paying very close attention to our quarterly reports this year, and I've been saying this all year, making sure that we are notating whether or not we believe we'll hit the fund balance usage that we have estimated in our budget. And as you know, our budget is approximately $1 billion, and GFOA guidelines are for districts to come in anywhere between 2 to 5% of their planned budget to their actual expense. We've been coming in on an annual basis on both our revenue projections and our expense projections at about 1, maybe 2% over the last couple of years. So we're pretty sure, as we continue to watch the quarterlies, that we will be spending into our fund balance anywhere from 30 to 45 million, call it, we think. We plan to show you the third quarter in June, and then we will have the fourth quarter done by September. Those 2 quarters are important, and especially our year-end reports, because I believe what we end up using in fund balance will be a very good estimate of what we might need to reduce in our budget for fiscal year 26. And so we have a timeline in this memo that you see here. And in addition to you all paying close attention to quarter 3 and the year-end reports so that we can define what our budget cuts will likely need to look like going into the fiscal year 26 budget design, we also are asking that that the board identify 2 board members to work with staff this summer on putting together a engagement process for next fall, as well as working to find a third party that can help us plan and facilitate for broad-based engagement around budget reductions for fiscal year 26. And I want to say we are working hard to prioritize the funding that we do have toward compensation for our employees and benefits. You're all very aware of that, and I know you all have been getting a lot of feedback about that. We have as well, and our bargaining team understands the interests of our associations in those 2 areas. We share those interests. At the same time, and I've been saying it for 3 years, we have a runway to get this budget to balance. we are nearing the end of that runway. And I keep saying it's coming, it's coming. Well, it is coming, and this fall, depending upon what the third quarter and fourth quarter look like, we're going to have to engage in a broad-based community work around where do we reduce. I also propose in this memo that as part of that work, we begin with a set of guidelines, guiding principles, so to speak, for budget reductions. And as an example, one of the most important guiding principles will be to look for reductions as far away from student impact as possible. I know very clearly that there will need to be reductions in central services. And that will be the first place we look. But I will also say that if it does come to fruition that we have around 40 million in fund balance use this year, and additional needs like for special education, where we don't have a long-term identified funding for some shortages, it will be important for us to consider the dollar amount that we're going to need to reduce, and it will be important for everyone to know that while we will have a guiding principle around keeping it as far away from student impact as possible, we will not be able to absorb that amount of reductions just in the central services. It will impact schools, which is why we need support from 2 board members this summer who are identified to help us think about that community engagement and making sure that we have broad stakeholder voice in that. And so it seems a little bit like a cautionary tale way of beginning our proposed budget presentation, but it is what it is. And we've been talking about it for several years, and so we just need to keep talking about it. So we're eyes wide open going into what we present to you in June and ask you to consider adopting for the 25 or 26 school year. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Copeland and Mr. Salmons. Oh, Mary has a question.
I have a question. When you talk about broad community, input and so forth, I know that the associations have an interest in it. I've heard them express it. But are you thinking beyond working with the associations and going into the broader community?
I am. I mean, I think we need to work with, hopefully our associations want to partner with us in reductions. And they would be invited to the table to do so. In the past, when other districts have done this that I've been a part of, there have also been, for example, built into the process, family surveys, or SAC surveys, or the DAC involvement, or the FAC involvement in helping guide us. What would a community voice or a parent voice look like in, just providing some input on where we look at reductions?
I had a similar question. When Denver and Adams superintendents just proposed cuts, did they have a community engagement process?
I'm not intimately familiar with their process. Knowing Adams 12 historically, when I've worked there, there was always broad community input into something like that, at least DAC, I would imagine. But I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I'd like to think more about that, and I didn't expect that in this. The other thing is, this is something I wonder every time this comes up, when you just said we'd want to engage a third party to help us with this, where in the budget does the money come from for a third party to come in and help us? I've always wondered when we bring in these.
It would likely come from a department budget. Many of our budgets have contracted services outlined, or sometimes departments will have staffing in the year that is unfilled, for example. And so there's savings from that unfilled staffing. And if you can't staff, oftentimes you'll shift it into contracted services to support you with whatever you need to get done without an FTE being hired. And so we would likely take it from something else that we have planned and work that. And the board, we can make a decision not to have a second party facilitator support us with this work. Most large districts that have to go through difficult budget reductions have an outside party to support the engagement efforts. But that doesn't have to be the way we do it.
Well, I'm just asking because this is a specific critique that we get quite often about our budget, is the wide use of third-party facilitators and consultants. So I just think there's some irony in, while trying to cut the budget, we would hire outside consultants. So just pointing that out.
And I just have one other thing too. At this moment, do we have any volunteers to work this summer on this project? Anybody willing? Right, well, it's to find out what we're going to be doing and planning it. So it's anyone who wants to get in this summer on planning for it. Okay, so we got Paula? What's the commitment? What are we talking about? Yes, okay. We got Paula, and I will volunteer too. So what I'm committing to is to meet with the superintendent at least, and Brenna, I guess, and whoever from your cabinet to talk about.
I'm assuming communications.
Yes. I mean, we're going to have a cabinet group and others, expanded cabinet group, most likely putting together some ideas and plans. The idea is that we would like the board, who will be receiving something in October, probably around what we believe a reduction plan would look like, and then passing some sort of resolution before we then go build budgets, because we're going to need to know what we're not building in, whether it's department budgets or school budgets. And so the idea is that as we work this summer to put ideas together around how to engage folks in this conversation before we build the plan and bring it to you, that we have 2 board members who we can go to and say, here's what we're thinking. Can you give us a reaction and some feedback? Because when we come back in August, we're going to need the whole board to study what we've put together this summer. And we'd like to have a couple of board members giving us input before we then bring it back to the whole board in August and then hit go. I mean, we're going to come in August and we're going to need to have some sort of plan based on, we don't know exactly how much. That will depend on our end of year reports. We're going to have a plan and hit go pretty quickly.
President Parker, may I add? Thank you, Director Reed and President Parker, for volunteering. I was nervous for a time commitment because Director Kenworthy and I are already doing policy, so thank you. I was like, I'm interested, but I don't want to overcommit. If you ever need subs or if you're on vacation, feel free to tap me in if you ever want to. So put that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you, Paula, as well. And we'll let Ms. Copeland begin. Thank you, Mr. Sammons, also for being here and your work on this detailed proposed budget.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. Quick procedural note before we get going. State statute indicates that we need to post public notice within 10 days of proposing the budget. So I want to share with you that we will be posting on May 12th in the Denver Post, the standard language, which is also in statute, that notices this proposed budget to the public and invites them to provide public comment. The public will have 2 opportunities to provide public comment, the primary one being May 29th during your regular meeting. Why I call that primary is it's still in time for the board to hear that public comment and provide us direction that informs the adopted budget we bring forward in June. And, of course, the public is invited to also comment on June 12th, which is the currently scheduled meeting for the board to approve the budget. And finally, procedurally, you're obligated to approve the budget by June 30th. June 12th is not the only day. So if the board so chooses, there are other options as well, but I just wanted to make sure you were aware that we are handling the required notice. And Michelle, I believe you signed that. Thank you very much. Other quick note, there's at least 3 people sitting behind me that are part of our budget team. They are sort of cautiously raising their hand. I want to recognize them because, well, many reasons. First of all, this budget is really, really big. It's not something I can know all the way through. It's not something Brian can know all the way through. It really does take a village. And we divide our supports between both schools and departments. And one of my most prouds of late is that in the annual customer satisfaction survey that we administer for operations functions, the budget team showed a 9-point year-over-year increase in overall favorability, which I find to be a testament to some really excellent system and structures that the team has put together. I hear consistently strong praise for the budget team's support, their organization, their homegrown tools which are a workaround to PeopleSoft so that they can present accurate and timely information to both school principals and department leads in a user-friendly format. And so I just want to acknowledge that there's quite a bit of operationalizing in this budget that they handle, and they are tremendously thoughtful in their stewardship of our resources and their customer service to our budget leads. So thank you all. Here we are, it's May. Okay. Oops. We're going to actually start with a multi-year general fund outlook. That's a different order than we sometimes do, but we think it's important to ground in what happens if we adopt this 25-26 budget, what happens in the future, because the future is just as important as the present. Then we'll go back a little bit and do a more detailed review of general fund revenue, general fund expense, capital reserve fund budget, and each of the other funds. It's really important to do a comprehensive look. We spend a lot of time talking about the general fund, but that's not the only place we budget and expend resources. So I want to make sure we cover everything. And then finally, we'll have a quick note on fee schedules. So in advance of showing the multi-year figures, I want to ground in what assumptions does the multi-year forecast share. And we try to keep our general assumptions consistent year over year for the multi-year so that we're not introducing a new methodology or a new set of assumptions. I would characterize both the revenue and expense assumptions as middle of the road. They are neither overly aggressive, which means in terms of expense, they're not super, super rosy, and it means in terms of revenue, nor are they overly pessimistic, which is to say we're not trying to lowball revenue or anything like that. We try to be very, very consistent, and we try to use assumptions that are publicly available whenever possible. So for example, our top line assumption, and one of the key assumptions in budget, is what is going to happen with inflation. And we use the Office of State Planning and Budget assumptions. They put these out on a regular basis. The current forecast for this calendar year CPI, which in turn drives 26-27 revenue, is 3.5%, right? Did I say that right? Uh-oh. Is it up there? It'll be on the next slide. There it is. And so that's the type of thing that we get from other people. We don't attempt to forecast it ourselves. And we use the same assumption for both revenue and expense, which is to say we're not somehow gaming any of the multi-year picture by saying, well, we're going to inflate revenue by 3.5, but we're not going to inflate expense by 3.5, right? Total program revenue does not increase by that 3.5%. That is because our funded count is going to continue to decline no matter what year averaging we use, because our actual count is continuing to decline. I would have said 3 or 4 years ago when I first started, it was a common thought, perception, not just in Jeffco, but in Front Range districts, that we were experiencing something a little bit unique to the pandemic. And I remember a very early presentation I gave where I said, I think these declines are going to level off at some point in the next 3 to 4 years. They have not. So that initial idea or forecast we had was wrong. Now, the trick becomes, well, when are they going to level off, or are they, right? It's a very difficult thing to know for sure. But at least in the next 2 to 3 years, the safest assumption is to generally estimate a consistent pattern, right? And to not imagine that we could somehow explain why they would stop dropping or not, right? So I just want to mention that part as well. Everything in the multi-year reflects both the original HB 24-1448 which is commonly referred to as the New School Finance Act bill from last session, as well as HB 251320, which did make certain revisions to the phase-in period of 1448. We are not assuming that they introduce a new budget stabilization factor, although that is very much under, in the rumor mills, right? There's certainly people out there who think that will happen. And like I said, actual enrollment is forecasted to decline around 800 students per year. I think we mentioned previously in a presentation that we can already see that our enrollment is dropping next year because of our Enroll Jeffco data. The Enroll Jeffco data is actually less rosy than an 800 student drop. It does look worse than that right now for next year, but we're fine to keep rolling with the 800 students until we get into the fall and see what happens. Expense compensation increases annually by step and lane plus COLA that when combined is equal to CPI. School-based spending is forecasted to decline proportionate to actual enrollment declines, meaning the multi-year already bakes in any savings that we have by virtue of our student-based budgeting formula. And it has every year that Brian and I have presented it. Annual district-wide program investments of approximately $5 million per year, and non-salary inflationary increases of a total of $1 million for the entire organization. I want to be clear, we do not assume, nor do we operationalize an automatic inflation increase on non-salary. We never have. It's part of the reason that I think the budget we're going to present is perhaps low compared to what we're going to spend. But non-salary inflation increases in the out year are $1 million total for the entire organization. You already have a question, Director Applegate?
I do, just really quick. Can you ground me again in what, when we say the district-wide programs, are we talking about the grouping of the budget, or are we talking about?
We're talking about things like special education, transportation, food nutrition services, those programs that are delivered on a district-wide basis as opposed to at a school level or through a school budget. Capital transfer in the out years is set to $15.5 million in FY27 and $16 million in FY28. Those minor incremental increases are an attempt to reflect potential inflation-based increases in that one portion of the budget, but nonetheless, those are the assumptions. A lot of words. This is just a graph, again, showing what historic CPI has been. I would say no one saw the level of inflation that we experienced coming, but there it was. And then OSPB, I always get the words in the wrong order. The 3.5 and the 3.3%, those are those lagging rates where current year, calendar year, actual inflation becomes next budget years or the following budget years CPI increase to our per pupil. Oh, OSPB, it's right there in front of me. So, please.
Are we anticipating that, so like this year, our funding was pretty flat because we got the increase from the state, but we also had the
Funded count decline.
Exactly. Are we anticipating that our funding will continue to remain fairly flat over the next few years? Oh.
Here's what we're anticipating our funding will do over the next few years. So to orient us, the green bars or the green arrows at the top are simply making sure we all reground in a shift that we made in our reporting that makes it look like all those hatched bars are much taller than all the purple ones, but the reason they look that way is because we brought about 26 million more in activity into the general fund. So I want to be clear, the comparison from 24 to 25, so 23-24 to 24-25, is a sort of false comparison because of that consolidation. But then the year over year subsequent, it's still apples to apples. We're not doing any additional consolidation. So we've already shared a revenue forecast, and the revenue forecast in the proposed budget is consistent with what we've said previously. It's $982 million. The current year forecast, so actual revenue, so from today, sitting here in May, what do we think we're going to bring in finally into the general fund? We're estimating we're going to bring in 985. That's a forecast, not a budget. The revised budget had the revenue at 982. So comparing the revised budget to next year's budget estimate is flat. Comparing this year's forecast as of today, which is 5 months after we adopted the revised budget, it's a $3 million drop. On the multi-year, the following years are increasing by between 1% and 2%. You can see that pretty clearly since the $1 billion is kind of a nice even-ish number. A $20 million increase represents roughly 2%. A $10 million increase represents roughly 1%. So those would be the total resources, new resources available per our existing forecast using OSPB's inflation and what's written into law about the School Finance Act. I want to ground for a second in reserves, because I think, understandably, I think the board has asked in the past and wants to understand what resources are available in the future to support the needs of the organization. So it's really important to talk about reserves. To make sure we're all using the same terminology and we can understand the best practice guidance available to us, I'm going to start with the difference between restricted reserves and assigned reserves. Restricted reserves are set-asides that are enforceable by law or already deployed towards a use such that they are unspendable. That definition comes from, it's promulgated by GFOA, but it comes from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. I don't make it up. It's the rule we follow in terms of when we're reporting and preparing the ACFR and preparing the budget. An assigned reserve refers to funds that are set aside for a specific purpose, but it is a management decision. In the eyes of GASB, an assigned reserve is an unrestricted reserve. And that is because it's management or board decision that it has a purpose. It's not enforceable by law. It's not decreed. It's not already spent, right? No outside entity can come in and force us to set aside reserves as carry forward for our schools or set aside reserves for a future year budget. We all make that decision. So it's only assigned by virtue of the decision made by management and the board. Then there's multiple types of assigned reserves: school carry forward, operational reserves, multi-year commitments, designated for next fiscal year fund use. We've talked a lot of, yes, would you like to ask a question?
You can finish your sentence.
We've talked a lot about school carry forward in the past. And so as a reminder, schools may underspend in a year. They can choose to spend that underspend intra-year, meaning they can do something supplemental in the year. And we see that happen in terms of oftentimes facility investments or supplemental materials or things that are important to them. They can also carry forward up to 4% of their operating budget as a reserve to spend the following year. And we find that schools do pretty consistently underspend and that this reserve balance across the district tends to replenish. There has been a little bit of a decrease over the last couple of years, and there might be a decrease from this year to next year. District-wide, Brian's nodding his head. He's done a detailed analysis. And the reality is schools continue to underspend and carry it forward to the following year. Yes?
I just wanted to ask a question. It's not on the slide, but it reminded me. We also have determinations of appropriated funds and allocated funds. So I understand this for the budget purposes, whether it's restricted or not restricted, but can you just remind me that once we have a budget, what are the steps going through allocation and appropriation?
You bet. So the total appropriation lines up pretty closely, although it does not have to line up exactly, to budget plus assigned reserves. Generally, that is your total appropriation. The one sort of like there's a moment in time exception around the designated for next fiscal year. So as of June 30 of this year, we're going to report on the balance sheet whatever it is next year's budget is going to use. However, that exact dollar amount was never part of this year's appropriation. Does that make sense? This year's appropriation only was ever your total budgeted expense plus the rest of your assigned reserves, which is to say your total budget was high enough that you needed to use fund balance this year. In that one moment in time, for like 2 weeks in June, there's this assigned reserve for next year, which was never part of this year's appropriation, nor is it intended to be. You were only granting permission to use it next year, not this year. But it shows up on the balance sheet as of June 30 as an assigned reserve. So that's the one moment where an assigned reserve is outside that same year's appropriation. Does that make sense? Otherwise, it's basically all the assigned reserves are appropriated.
So that helps. And is there just never a real category of allocated? Is that just another word for appropriation?
Yes, do we use that word? Is that? Thank you. So internally, we talk about allocations to schools and to departments, but that is an operational word, which is to say an amount of resource has been made available to a budget decision maker to then build their budget with. Operational reserves. This year's operational reserves, which are both assigned and appropriated, are 1%, or they started out at 1%. As a reminder, this year at the revised budget, we added $7 million to our budgeted expense. That was because we underestimated budgeted expense when we adopted the budget last year. And so in our new budget methodology, which was fully new this year, we did sort of inadvertently lowball our budgeted expense for the current year, right? Remember, we did the revised budget, we increased the expense. Great. We're all on the same page. Operational reserves are a way to deal with timing issues. We've said before that, exactly who's going to submit what order when for which thing and when it's going to show up and when we actually book it. We have no idea. It's not within the crystal ball that we have. And so we need the ability to not, to make sure we can pay those things which come in the door. And so that's what that 1% is really about, is sort of timing and a little bit of an allowance for things that are beyond our control, utilities, natural disasters, you name it. Multi-year commitments, we have very few multi-year contracts, but the handful of them show up here. We already talked about designated for next fiscal year. Finally, that brings us to unassigned reserve. Jeffco Board Policy EL 15 says the recommended budget, and there's kind of like a shall in there, but anyway, achieve and maintain a year-end unassigned general fund balance of 4% of annual operating expenditures. I regret that that overlaps the Jeffco logo there, but that's quoting EL 15. So what external guidance exists on adequate reserves? GFOA is a primary source for guidance, though the credit market's perspective is also worth considering as it influences our borrowing costs. As a best practice, GFOA recommends governments maintain at least 16% unrestricted. So that would exclude our TABOR. So for a $1 billion general fund budget, this would be $160 million in unrestricted. As a reminder, unrestricted includes assigned and unassigned, except for that one moment in time kind of thing for the next year's bit, although that's still technically assigned. plus the 30 million-ish in Tabor reserves. So the total target of reserves would be 190 million to follow GFOA guidance of a minimum reserve target. Rating agencies. Rating agencies determine how our credit is rated. And I recently met with Moody's as part of their annual checkup process, although they have not done an annual checkup with us in 3 years, so it seems like a bit of a misnomer. Their scorecard for K-12, they use the same scorecard across the country, sees above 25% available. They use the word available, that's GFOA's version of unrestricted. That would produce a AAA rating. AA is at least 17.5% available, AKA unrestricted, to 25%. Single A is 10% to 17.5%. BAA, these are unique things they use to confuse people. It has nothing to do with a sheep, is 5 to 10%. So if we were striving for a AAA rating with Moody's, we would be targeting 250 million in unrestricted plus our 30 million in restricted for a total target of 280 for a AAA rating.
Really quick, thank you for all these interruptions, by the way. What is our current rating with Moody's?
We are within the AA range. We are a AA2. They have different strata within the AA ratings. Our issuer rating is AA2. Our issuance rating is AA1. We will have an update to that within the next week or so. My speculation is that we are going to receive a negative outlook, which is in consideration of this year's budgeted spend of fund balance and next year's budgeted spend of fund balance. Our credit analyst called me on Tuesday. He had pulled down this presentation. First of all, complimented me on a couple of different graphics in here. That was lovely. But secondly, said, clearly you're planning to spend fund balance next year as well. That makes 2 years in a row, and that's a negative outlook.
So you beat me to the second question, so well done, well perceived. And then I just want to make sure that my work world and my volunteer world align. A lower negative outlook, could impact us in lending and borrowing and
That's
interest
correct.
rates, yes?
It will, well, it won't, I shouldn't say it will. A negative outlook typically then leads to a downgrade. They sort of move in stepwise progression. A downgrade does have a direct impact on our cost of borrowing. So it makes it more expensive to raise the same amount of money. So here's our multi-year, using all those assumptions I just detailed. Blue column is the budget for 24-25. Orange column is the forecast for 24-25. So those two columns deal with the same year. One is a budget, one is a forecast. Green is the proposed budget for 25-26. The two purples are 26-27 and 27-28. Those are forecasted based on the set of assumptions I shared with you. Unassigned reserves dipped to $0 in FY27. The board policy would suggest that we would want to have 40 million approximately in unassigned reserves based on the level of spending that we're doing as an organization in that year. School carry forward and operating reserves dipped to 0 in FY28. And furthermore, to avoid a quote-unquote negative unassigned reserve, FY28 assumes that FY29 is going to reduce spending. It doesn't continue that same pattern that I had just articulated in terms of revenue up by inflation, expenses going up by comp increases, quasi-matching inflation, et cetera. It doesn't continue those assumptions. It assumes that we have identified by that point 20 million in cuts. Now I want to be clear. This multi-year picture is bad. And it's not what we want to manage to, and it's certainly not what Brian and I would propose as a realistic plan for the future. it is what will happen if we don't change what we're doing. And so I think that it's really important, in my mind. We can argue a little bit about plus or minus 2 or 5 million, or who thinks what's going to happen with revenue. That's taking up airspace when we could be talking about a really salient need to adjust what we're doing, and where and how and when are we going to do that, which I think is very important to do soon. So we've shown this slide in just about every budget presentation this spring. It's a reminder that to make any significant changes to the budget, it does take a lead time, because by the time we do our school-based allocations, Director Parker, you're right, that's where we use that word, or departmental, there's very little we can change or adjust without breaking promises to students and families. And I think we know from other districts that it's pretty rough when you come out with a significant change in February or March that impacts your services, and people have already done school choice and they've already signed up for things that maybe they aren't going to get. That's not the kind of way we want to do it. It's not the way we did it when we did school closures, right? We made a decision in a October-November timeframe so that we were really clear on what we were going to offer students and families in the choice process and in the budgeting process. So we are now in April to October, where we should be planning and prioritizing if we want to make any significant changes for 26, 27. Each time I've showed this spring, I have noted that we have no plans to make significant changes for 25, 26, given this timeline, right? Significant changes really aren't possible on a short lead time. So,
Hey, Brenna,
yes, ma'am.
but I'm wondering in the slide before,
Yes,
when the last line said if we need to cut 20 million from expenses by FY '29,
yes,
but that seems way too late.
that's right. That's what I had tried to say as well.
Okay, so why do you use 29 there? Is that like the worst case scenario? Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm attempting to show what happens in the out years if we change nothing. And then I'm also attempting to recommend that we do change something.
Okay.
It's kind of like when we first started and you showed us the terrible cliff if we didn't change.
If we didn't close schools, and when we did adjust structurally our budget by 20 million through that process. Those were real reductions that we didn't refund those, you know what I'm saying? Like those positions and activities went away. And so that was a significant shift that we did do in response to a multi-year where we could see we can't keep doing what we're doing. Yes.
I just want to reiterate that the closure of the schools has allowed us to extend our runway, right? And so now we're just 2 more years past that, 3-ish, depending upon which phase you look at, and it's coming back around.
So, I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
I'm really sorry for continuing. I was writing questions and I'm like, well, we stopped, so I'm going to jump in. So to Dr. Varda's point, significant changes are difficult for 25, 26, but will this work over the summer contemplate potential changes in 25, 26? Or are we really not focusing on 25, 26 at all?
We're not focusing on 25, 26. All of our, the proposed budget, actually, Brian's team has done an extensive analysis of the roll-up of hundreds and hundreds of budgets that have been created by hundreds and hundreds of budget managers across every school and every department. And so at this point, those budgets are set, people are in the positions, planned programs and expenditures are done. That is what's contributing to the analysis on the expenditure side and the numbers that you're seeing in this presentation. It will be too late this summer to make adjustments and go backwards from that budget process that we've just gone through. But what we will be able to do is create some process so that when we load SBBs and department budgets in December, January-ish next year, we need to give direction to our finance team to say, where are we loading and where are the reductions, generally speaking, going to occur, so we don't load those funds.
Is there, and that makes sense.
Then we get ahead of it,
Yep.
right? And
No.
people know before.
We're not cutting people who think they have jobs.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Is there a potential, because in past years, I'm going to botch all these words, so forgive me, we have not spent sometimes what we thought, and I know we've tightened our budget up, so we don't have that as much. But is there the potential that there's guidance from you, the leadership, that says, hey, when you have openings, try to, if we don't have to spend extra, don't spend. And I say that, like, in my work world, if the budgets are tight, we say, hey, look, yes, everything's set, but if there's extra or more, we're making really thoughtful decisions in the real time, or will we give guidance in that
I think this is a great question as we think about our guiding principles, right? So for us to take a look at where can we make reductions as far away from impact to students as possible is one idea. Another idea might be, where do we have some Disney Plus type of reductions that we can say, this is something that's not having a big impact, and we're just gonna say to people, don't do it anymore. We can also take a look at, and I've done this before, where we have large numbers of vacancies, right? Maybe that model of staffing in that arena of business is not necessarily the most efficient and effective way to operate. And we can say, are there different ways to provide that same service without that number of FTE? Because we're obviously having a hard time staffing it anyway. So can we shift the service model and maybe possibly have some efficiencies and savings? I think that's the kind of conversation we can have in relation to that. We have a situation right now, and we've talked about it with food nutrition services. So we're doing some of what you're talking about, where we've said, we've done the chef's brigade analysis. We've said, we're over budget. We're going to have to do a general fund transfer, but we need to, over time, shrink the budget to align to our resources. And that means we need to be more efficient in our menu offerings, which we think also will help with food waste and some of our sustainability efforts. And our staffing model is still such that it was during the pandemic. And we know our staffing ratios might be off a bit. So we're not going to make cuts, but what we want Beth and her team to do is realign to different staffing levels through attrition, right? Because we do have a lot of turnover in that type of service model. So that's an example of how we're already doing some of that work to try to make sure that we're being more efficient and saving over time.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. I think for me, I want to go in not thinking like, hey, we're good for 25, 26, right? Like we need to be in a mindset of, no, we're pulling from a fund balance and we're making decisions because we believe in the work that we're doing. But we need to be in the mindset of like every penny matters, even in budgets of $1 billion, right?
I think the biggest lever still available as of May 10th is compensation increases. So to your point, every penny matters. And certainly we could argue about it, but avoiding cost increases is often a way to kind of make the easiest cut. So that's what's still on the table, as well as, to your point, being judicious in what we do spend. But again, I want to say, as an organization, this year's adopted budget was low, and we had to revise at mid-year, not because people were being wasteful, but because we underestimated costs relating to special education, relating to food and nutrition services, et cetera. Those were not things that we could say, let's not do it. It wasn't optional. So I would be surprised if we were able to identify anything material next year that we could save. Just a quick reminder on state statute. The school district must state our plan to ensure that the use of the beginning fund balance will not lead to an ongoing deficit. So the resolution that adopts the budget needs to state the plan to ensure this. I've presented this to the board in prior years, not necessarily this most recent year, but in years prior. So the next slide repeats some things that we've discussed in previous plans around adjusting the budget. So the resolution could, for example, articulate a plan to reduce expenses in future years by adjusting programming or optional services, reducing staffing, services, and contracted expenses, avoiding or limiting future cost increases, and/or increasing revenue in future years through some type of voter authorization. Those are elements of a high-level plan that could be articulated in the board's resolution. I'm happy to provide sample language from prior years when this type of language has shown up in the resolutions this board has approved. I'm also happy to show other districts examples of language if folks want to understand more. What does the plan need to look like? It does not need to look like an attachment of 10 pages of a plan. It needs to articulate what are the core things we're going to do in a meaningful and material way to ensure that the use of fund balance does not lead to an ongoing deficit. Great. And so we are to enrollment.
Thank you, Ms. Copeland. Sorry, I'm a little bit hoarse, so if you can't hear me, just let me know. I'm going to go through these rest of the slides. So we're going to start with enrollment and general fund revenue. Okay, so the district membership, which again represents the actual number of students in our schools, is forecasted to be around 6,300 students for 25-26 school year. This marks an 8.7% decrease in enrollment since 2021 school year. We anticipate this trend to continue with the decline of approximately 800 students per year over the next 3 years as smaller grades progress through the high schools. Charter school membership has remained fairly constant in recent years, and the projections for their enrollment suggest a similar trend. Okay, so we have included the district managed school matriculation patterns from school years 24, 25, and the forecasted 26 to illustrate the declining enrollment of around 800 students. Kinder to second grade averages around 4,400 students. 8th to 9th grade has a net increase of approximately 900 students. This results in roughly 5,300 new memberships from kindergarten to 12th grade. However, students leave the district after 12th grade, leading to a decrease of around 6,100 students. So this results in a forecasted total enrollment decrease of around 800 students. All right, so here are the final 25-26 total program enrollment assumptions. We've been showing these over the last few months that are going to be driving the internal school finance resource model. As you can see, there's an 800 student membership decline. The actual district FTE is also declining about around 800 students, resulting in a funded count of 64,800 using the 5-year averaging and then 64,300 utilizing a 4-year averaging. On the next slide, I'll talk about why I use both.
Before you get to the next slide, I am still struggling to know how many students we have in Jeffco, especially if I give a presentation. So for instance, I'm looking at the 24-25 budget, and in here it says there are approximately 78,000 pre-K-12 students. So when I see this slide, the one, well, I don't know, that one. I see the pre-K count is 2.4. Just help me understand how we got to 78,000 from what I'm seeing here.
So first of all, that includes charter, and I do try in writing the ACFR to always say district and charter or all of Jeffco. Those are the words I use when I'm talking about all of Jeffco. And it's always contemporaneous to the year in which it was printed. And so that's FY24 total membership across district and charter schools across pre-K to 12.
When we get funding from the state, though, we include the charter students because they're our students.
The formula does. Not a single number on this page or in this presentation includes it.
Okay. Oh, I know we pass it on, but we put it in it's in our budget, isn't it?
Nope.
It's never in the budget.
Correct. The budget is stated net of the amount we pass through. That's why we use the district enrollment. We're showing you district revenue based on our share and district enrollment.
But the state does pay us for the charter students.
Yes, and we pass it through.
Pass it through. I know we pass it through. I did not know we pass it through before we make a budget.
That's correct, we do.
Okay, thanks.
I will jump in on this because Brennan and I have been having this conversation since I got here. And I think it is a conversation that we need to continue to talk about in terms of how we are explaining our budget, the perception of our budget, and how we're building it. In previous districts that I have been a part of doing district-level budgeting work, they do not do it this way. Not all districts do it this way. Some districts count the charter piece in the budget and show it as a line item transfer out. I will say, one of the benefits of doing that is that it shows the district budget being more closely aligned to what the state publishes. That being said, it still wouldn't match completely because we continue to refine our enrollment based on enrolled Jeffco. We continue to refine the expenditures based on SBBs and department budgets, so it wouldn't align perfectly. But it is a bit of a confusing point in my mind in terms of how we budget and then align to sort of what CDE publishes. So we can have this conversation with you guys over time, but I've been part of districts that do it differently.
Yeah, I think that's a big point, because especially when we're doing negotiations, and there's a perception that Jeffco got X number of $1 million more than we got last year. But then we look at our budget that we're showing, and they say, well, you're lying.
And Mary, we did explain this at the table this year, 2 sessions ago or so, and just explained to them how the charter pass-through goes through, and then we budget the remaining for the district. It's sort of 6 or 1/2 of the other, and it sort of depends on what your preference is, but it is, different districts do it differently.
I think that, again, the budget methodology that the board has asked us to put in place is provide you our best estimate of revenue and our best estimate of expense. We can switch to a different methodology if you want to assume different revenue or different expense. But at the moment, in order to do that, we do inform our own assumptions by the data we have on hand. We don't have to. We could do it different. And we could include charters. There are pros and cons. Including charters over the last several years would have made it that much more difficult to articulate what was happening in the district, because the district was the only entity losing funded count. And so charters were even, and so we could have done it. It would have been one more layer of explanation to then unpack down to the district-only figures, which are the figures available to the district to employ people. So in some sense, it would have made things harder. So it's just a 6 to 1, 1/2 of another at times, but I'm happy to explore that, and I'm happy to create addendums in the future if you want to see the total numbers. We did do it for one of the bargaining units that presentations that Amanda did. Absolutely, it's something we're willing to put together. Thank you.
Great questions. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot more on this, but I will say, I'm sorry, excuse me. The forecasted enrollment that was provided to the state in November reflected a decrease of around 250 students. So this is kind of the differences that we have from the CD worksheet to what we have here today. The 800 student decrease that Brenda mentioned, in the previous slides, we used the most recent information that we have. So my team tracks the EJ data every week, and so we see what's coming in, and we've been doing that for the last 3 years. So every week, we then have a forecast out on a weekly basis on what it would be towards the end of the year, towards October account. And so this information we have here today is the most accurate information we have at this very moment, and that's why we always will try to provide you with the most accurate information that we have on every presentation. And again, CDE always includes the charter schools, and we do not include the charter schools in our presentations. Sorry. So during the budget update presentation in April, there were some questions about the new school finance formula and how it works. So today, we've included a diagram to illustrate how the House Bill 1320, it draft, it still hasn't been signed by the governor yet, Finance Act phases in the new school finance formula. The phase-in period spans 7 years, and during which both the new and the old formulas will be used concurrently to determine each district's total program funding. The first step is to calculate the total program utilizing the old and new school finance formulas. For 26, the old formula will use a 5-year average, while the new formula will use a 4-year average. Next, we find the difference between the new and the old formulas. This difference is then multiplied by the phase-in percent, which is going to be 15% for FY26, to get to the phase-in additional total program amount. We add this amount to the old formula total program that to then determine the calculation for the House Bill 1320 calculated total program. Finally, we compare the amounts to the prior year total program and use the greater of the two amounts, right? So this was just making understanding multiple models, multiple ways of looking at it to get to the final amount that we have. Okay, so after running all the models and everything else we have, the overall general fund budget for 25-26 projected to remain flat compared to the 24-25 revised budget. Utilizing the enrollment assumptions presented earlier in the House Bill 1320 total program calculation, the 25-26 total program, district share only, is forecasted to increase by approximately $1 million. Additionally, we are forecasting increases of $1 million each in state categoricals and the local share of civic ownership taxes. However, these increases are expected to be offset by a $3 million decrease in the miscellaneous fees and other revenue, primarily due to anticipated decrease in interest revenue. Okay. So then we're going to go into the general fund expenditures. Okay. So the district adjusted its budgeting methodology in 24-25 fiscal years to use a budget as an estimate of actual spending rather than the maximum allowable spend. This methodology was again applied for 25-26, where the total approved appropriation is greater than the total school and department allocations, which in turn is greater than the total budgeted expenditures. This estimated total spend accounts for factors such as estimated vacancies, staff turnovers, and underspends.
I have a question. Is there a reason why you did 110 to 107 instead of 107 to 110? You know, the numbers, you're using the highest number dashed to a lower number.
There was no rhyme or reason for that. That was just kind of the order that we had in this. We can reverse those if need be. Okay, so here's the general fund expenditures by account type. General fund expenses are budgeted to decrease by $8 million based on the current expense adjustments and investment assumptions. The district plans to spend $15,400 per pupil from the general fund. The compensation budget amounts are approximately 84% of the district's general fund budget now. Do you have a question?
Go ahead and keep going. I may come back to this one.
Okay. Okay, so during a budgetary cycle, identifying year-over-year decreases is crucial as they can help offset budgetary investments. The budgetary allocation decreases identified included reducing capital contributions from the general fund, the FY25 one-time stipends, student-based budgeting allocation reductions due to declining enrollment, ESSER 3 grant deployment, and the SAE one-time transfer. On the other hand, the budgetary allocation increases or investments included the FY26 compensation adjustments, investment in the student service or student success and security, continuation of the ESSER 3 program, and some minor inflationary adjustments. Okay, so account and program type, two sides of the same coin. So to help clarify the differences between presenting expenses by account and program type, we have again included this slide that defines each. The account type categorizes an expense based on what the expense is, while the program type categorizes the expense based on what program the expense will support. School districts are required by CDE to report budget and actual expenses by both account type and account program. Okay, so we have already presented the budget by expense types or by account types. Now here's the other side of the coin, showing the general fund summary by program type. This view presents the same information that you just saw earlier, but just by program. It again shows a decrease of $8 million in FY26 proposed budget. As you can see, the largest program investments are allocated to special education instruction and operation and maintenance programs. This is a new view that we have included this year. This is an expenditure by account and program type matrix. This slide provides a matrix of both accounts and programs. Here you can identify how much is budgeted in a particular group by finding the cross-section. Additionally, the program type includes in each roll-up and a few examples of the expenses within each program are provided above. Illustrated here is approximately 65% of the general fund budget is allocated to total compensation for instruction and support programs. This includes general instruction, instructional support, and special education instruction program types. Okay, so here we have the general fund summary, which shows both revenue and expenses by account type, presenting the budget fund use of $38 million for FY 24-25. The summary table also includes a year-end projection for 24-25, where the estimated revenue is coming slightly higher than budgeted expenses, and also exceeds the, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, sorry about that. Where the estimated revenue is coming in slightly higher than budgeted, as Brenda mentioned earlier in the previous slides. So this will result in approximately a $39 million use of fund balance as we're forecasting for 24-25. Additionally, we have the 26 proposed budget included, where revenue of $982 million and an expense budget of $1,012 million, leading to a budgeted use of fund balance of $29 million.
I do have a question on the services, purchase services, where there was a big difference from 73 to 88. Was there one thing that caused that to go up, or is it multiple?
I can answer that if you want to.
Go for it.
Yep. Oh, thank you. I have some water here, but yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so a lot of that, some of that's included is the POOD expenses. We talked about that in the previous presentation, how support student success is overspending some of their POOD allocations. And so that's one major line there that's included in there. Also, SPED contracted services are also included in there. So a lot of the identifications that we had in the previous presentation are in that $88 million in purchase services.
Right, I think we mentioned in our previous presentation that special education was overspending current year budget by about $10 million, and most, if not all of that, is in purchase services.
And that's because we outsource some of our resources that we need. Got it. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, so the placement out of district services, an individual student's IEP will sometimes put them into a school that's not a Jeffco school, and that shows up as a purchase service. Those costs on a per student basis have almost doubled in about 4 or 5 years. It's substantial. And again, that's a purchase service as well as just contracting for certain types of services to our students with IEPs who are served in our schools. Both of those show up as purchase services.
But in this look, that's purchase services across kind of all areas.
Correct.
Okay, so that's transportation, that's
Everything, yeah. The grid on the prior slide might be helpful for you to see service accounts. You know, it's breaking out next year's budget as opposed to this year's forecast. This year's forecast sums up to 88. Next year's budget sums up to 84. You can see that our two biggest categories are instruction, so 37 million, and instruction and instructional support. Instructional support is typically the category where special education shows up, but those are all service accounts that directly impact instruction and instructional support to students. And then 28 million is operations and maintenance. The largest category there is about $21 million worth of utilities expense, which shows up as a purchase service because utilities are a service. General and school administration includes a number of different purchase services. And then transportation includes approximately $2 million in budgeted purchase services.
And I'm sure you've said this already, so forgive me. This assumes what type of increase for staff and educators next year? what we're currently,
It does not reflect anything that was put on the table last night. It includes assumptions prior to that.
thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Brenda to talk to the Capital Reserve Fund.
So this section is especially important because the only reason we are showing a year-over-year decrease in total expense is because we are deferring maintenance on our facilities and infrastructure. So some of this is material we've gone through before, but we wanted to make sure to be really transparent about how we're budgeting and estimating and planning for regular capital expenditures, capital renewal. So on the left, you see a formula that looks at annual capital replacement value, looks at replacement values across different categories of capitalization. So it's buildings, it's content, it's technology, capitalized technology, et cetera. There on the right, you see the table of our current replacement values. These are things we work on every year to estimate what would happen if a building burned down, how much would it cost to replace, or it ran its life cycle, how much would it cost to replace. So independent sources recommend that an organization in general spend between 1.5% and 2.5% on annual capital renewal. 2% is the middle of the range, so that's the value we've reported here, although there can be reasons to, be elsewhere in the range. That would result in an estimated annual capital expense in today's dollars of $106 million against our portfolio of capital assets. This shows approximately 15 years worth, 14, I guess, 13, I can't count, of spend and adjusted to current value. And you'll see that over the last 6 years or so, we were averaging much higher spends, somewhere between 170, 160 million a year. That was in part because we had deferred maintenance in the prior 6 years. And so again, when you defer maintenance, the bill does come due. And on average, across this longer time period, it also approximates about 105 million. So we're triangulating to the same annual estimate of what we should be investing in capital renewal from 2 different methodologies.
And this slide does not include any bond spending?
Of course it does, yes. That's one of the primary sources.
Okay. Okay. Because you didn't say that then. You said
Oh,
it's
sorry.
deferred maintenance, and so I thought it was not including the bond spending.
A big chunk of the bond was deferred maintenance.
Oh, okay.
So the source is irregardless of the spend, and this is a use graph. So when we connected with our facilities team about what projects are they aware of that needs to be completed, they do a facility condition assessment annually and look and prioritize projects across all the different categories of investment across 4 different priorities. Priority 1 is critical systems failures. Priority 2 is code and ADA compliance. Priority 3 is additions, direct program support, site and field improvements. And priority 4 is secondary program support, temporary building removal, minor renovations. That'd be things like paint and carpet. The facilities team on their horizon, this is not all in 1 year, but on their horizon has identified 500 million in priorities 1 through 4 needs in our facilities. Again, not all of it has to be done next year, of course, but they have to plan on a multi-year horizon. The strategic capital plan will further explore the projects in each of these priority categories and determine, again, how would this look over multiple years? But for today, this is the view that our facilities team has on what needs doing in the 3 to 5 year horizon. So the proposed multi-year that you saw previously assumed again that we dropped the general fund contribution into capital, but that we continue to spend capital, not to the level of our 14-year average or not to the level recommended by benchmarks, but to a $60 million level, which would be deferring $45 million annually or slightly more inflation adjusted in capital expenditures.
I have a question. I understand that money that's in the capital fund can only be used for capital purposes. You couldn't use it for any compensation or anything like that. Is there ever a way to get money out of the capital fund, transfer it anywhere other than building?
I think not legally.
I want to do it legal. I guess what I'm trying to say is when we talk about the cap transfer every year, knowing that once it gets in there, that's its purpose and it will be used for that. I'm just thinking ahead of possible savings or something of just having cap transfer be broken into smaller pieces during a fiscal year so that you don't give the whole 30 million that we used to or 15 million, but you do it as needed and then you save yourself the situation where you've put it out there, over there, and it can't go anywhere else.
Can I jump in? I'm going to jump in. Given the needs versus the means, I think the question assumes that I want to make sure I'm clear on the question, Mary. Are you saying that we have so much, you feel like we have too much in capital and we need to pull it out and use it for something else?
I'm not saying we have too much in there. I'm just saying once it's there, we can't pull it out for any reason. So there's some disaster.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I don't know, Julie, what you would say, but if there's some sort of like policy waiver that the board could contemplate around reallocating capital from an accounting perspective? I'm not sure why the board would do that. It would not be something I would ever recommend the board do.
And I don't want to do that. I want to not put money in there that we can never get out.
Yeah, and if the board wants to have a conversation around reducing it further from 30 to 15 to something lower, I think you can.
Yeah, that's good. I just want to know options for the future, things that we can have as an idea in our heads.
I would be super careful about that. Having taught in buildings that have severe issues. And I think we had the same conversation not last night, the night before, with some folks that were saying, like, we don't think you should be putting money in buildings, we think you should be putting in compensation. And that sounds great until you're working in a building with bathrooms that don't work or, sewage systems that don't work. And I have taught in buildings like that. So I'm just saying that can look really attractive. Like, oh, we can just put that off. We can just put that off. That can end up being really penny wise and pound foolish. That's what I worry about.
Yeah, and I just know we still have money in there for potential new schools. And so it is there for potential schools we may not build or we may not need for a long time.
Actually, that's a really good point of clarification. This capital budget that we're talking about now with the $15 million transfer in next year, which is what's proposed, and the $60 million investment or budgeted expenditures for whatever the facilities team thinks needs to be prioritized, and then the contracts come to the board, that kind of thing, over a certain amount, all that. That contemplates the 2 schools not being built. So those funds are then freed up in this budget for the purpose of, this multi-year, for the purpose of investment in capital priorities. And so I want to make, that's an important point to make clear, because if the board has different direction for us on that issue or this budget, it's important for you all to be able to give us that direction. And then Mary, to your point around, man, this capital transfer every year seems like a big chunk of money that's going into a fund for one-time use that obviously we need, and we already don't have enough money for, like everything else. And wouldn't it be great, though, if we didn't have to make that transfer, right? One of the things I would say is, as the board continues to talk about what you've shared as an interest in a 2026 election and ballot measure, is that if you had an ongoing mill levy override for the purpose of capital investment that could bring these funds in and it was guaranteed year over year over year over year to the tune of, say, 60 million, then you could take the 30 million that you transfer and repurpose that, because you could guarantee it's ongoing, and you could repurpose it into things like compensation and programming for students. And so that, I think, is an answer to get to your point of, like, can we get out of this cycle of transferring this into an account that then we can't get it back out of, and all those things. So that's something that I think the board can talk about when we begin to discuss your interest in something on the ballot in 2026.
And I know, President Parker, you've been with me at the CAC committees, but I do think I think Director Reed is 100% right. And I know we also have a board committee with parent and community involvement that's weighing in, and I know we could lean on them if we got to a really itchy, twitchy point. And you know that too, because you've been in those with me.
I just think on the 60 million that was to go to the new schools, I think we have to communicate this somehow. I don't even know if we've announced we're not building 2 schools until maybe this moment. I don't know. I don't recall another public announcement of that. I know we've talked a lot about it in our meetings. I'm not sure. But either way, I think since that was part of the bond and voters voted to build 2 new schools, we can choose to do something else with them, but I think we have to have some kind of communications about that, to be clear. Somehow.
Understood. I believe that one way to do that is to specifically articulate it in the budget resolution. So it would show up as a whereas the original 2018 CIP included a budget of $59.8 million towards the construction of 2 new schools. Now therefore would be, those funds are no longer planned towards that purpose and instead available for capital renewal and investment for the district in an ongoing way. That's one way to do it very clearly and publicly, in addition to speaking about it here. We can also add slides in our next presentation if you would like, whatever meets the needs of the board. All right, so we are running a little bit behind. Brian thinks he can go through the other funds pieces pretty quick. We do think it's important. This is real money and resources that we're deploying across the entire organization, so forgive us. We're going to try and get through the rest of the content. It will be a little faster.
Thank you, Brenna. Okay, so kind of preview of all the slides going forward. Each slide is a different fund. At the very beginning, we try to define the fund the best that we can to kind of give an idea of what the fund actually supports, right? So we have to start with the Food Nutrition Services Fund. This oversees all financial activities related to the school breakfast and lunch programs. As we know, we have the Healthy School Meals for All that ensures all students have access to breakfast and lunch at no cost to their families. Okay? So as illustrated, the overall budget from 25 to 26 projected to decrease by approximately $2 million. The Food Nutrition Service team plans to meet this target through reductions in both central and site-based kitchen expenses. These adjustments are necessary to more align expenses with projected revenue. FY 24-25, this fund required a $3 million transfer from the general fund. For the 25-26 proposed budget, there's a $4.1 million budgeted transfer from the general fund that is included. All right, so here we have the Employee Benefits Fund, which covers the self-insured medical plan claims for dental vision, as well as the new UHC health insurance claims. This fund excludes the Kaiser Health and Para. This budget is increasing by approximately $8.4 million next year to accommodate the rising insurance costs and potential claims.
Just a quick note on this fund. Do see the revised budget was at 31.7, and our projected actual for the current year is
35.4.
35.4. Sorry, my glasses are messed up. So this fund has continued, the actual claims costs have continued to increase substantially and were underestimated at the outset of the current year.
Okay, so here we have the Insurance Reserve Fund, which has the authority by state law to allow districts to maintain an insurance reserve for self-insured purposes and to fund liability worker compensations and property insurance premiums. Currently, for 25-26, the Insurance Reserve Fund will remain flat, around $15.8 million.
Tiny addendum, we are still negotiating the final terms of our insurance program, which you will vote on May 29th. We did include some supplemental information. If we receive a significant increase to our self-insured reserve on any line of our insurance programs, we will probably need to put more money into this fund to plan for that accordingly.
I had asked on Wednesday if this liability includes legal liability.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so here we have the Child Care Fund, which again, after the fund consolidation, it only has SAE in it now. So this fund supports only the school age enrichment program that provides the before and after school care in a fee for service model. 24-25, this fund received a transfer of $1.5 million from the general fund. 25-26, SAE department took proactive measures to help ensure the general fund transfer would not be needed. So in the FY 25-26 proposed budget will be around $8.4 million. Okay, so we have the Campus Activity Fund, which is used to manage revenue collected on behalf of the schools and departments who benefit from the expenditures. Funds are collected from fundraisers, fees, and activity charges and donations. FY 25-26 proposed budget will be around $23.8 million, a slight increase from 24-25 revised budget due to expenses that we see increasing. Central Service Fund provides the mail services, copier, and printing services for the district, as well as the visual installation, maintenance, and repair of school and departments for the audio and visual. Revenue is based on billing to schools and departments based on the services that are provided. For 25-26, the budget's decreasing around $400,000. Okay, and the last one, we have the Property Management Fund, which manages all the activities associated with community use and rental of the district buildings, fields, and other facilities. FY 26 proposed budget aligns with historical budgets and expense trends that we have.
I have a question on this one. Is this bigger than just Boys and Girls Club using facilities at a school?
Yes.
Okay.
This is where our ACEs revenue, so where we lease out the entire facility to the school serving autistic children.
Okay. And so, but it looks like we don't get enough revenue from those leases to cover the costs.
The revenue almost exactly matches the expense. These are 3 columns that represent expense only. This is not the revenue.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn with Brenda to finish up with the fee schedules.
So as a important procedural part annually, when we present the proposed budget, we also present the proposed fees. Schools and departments set fees for certain types of services. As an important note, the budget team does not. Most student fees are set at the school level and reflect actual costs for consumable materials or costs for optional experiences that are voluntary in nature. Those are the 2 different types. Consistent with state statute, Central Office does collect and review proposed school-level fees and creates a list of the maximum fee amount by category of expense for the board review and approval. Note that not every school charges each fee, and some schools charge fee amounts lower than the maximum based on their actual expenses. So if one school has an art fee of $25, another school might have an art fee of $10. It depends on what they're buying and what the cost of what they're buying is based on their specific program choices, and they have choices to make in terms of the program. The board docs item has 2 attachments concerning fees. New this year is a memo outlining additional fees that are set for specific services in the district. So you will see meal fees, tuition for pre-K, and SAE fees, all listed in one memo. Hopefully that's helpful to you. As a note, each of those websites has extensive information about our fees. That's available for parents as well as public consumption. Second, there's a PDF of the maximum fee schedule with the caveat that those are maximum fees. That does not represent the fee amount that every school charges. And again, not every school even charges every fee. Fees are approved via your resolution to adopt the budget, so that June resolution. Now, I want to be clear that fees are posted, and the reason that we go ahead and post them before they are officially approved is that parents generally want to know what these things are cost so they can plan for it. That does not mean you can't change them. If there's something you see on the fee schedule that you would like us to change, generally speaking, such changes hopefully would only go directionally down as opposed to up, because we wouldn't necessarily want to increase something. But nonetheless, if you have specific questions about those fees and what actual costs they represent, because again, they're all set to mirror actual costs, we're happy to go into those details or get you additional information. Any further questions?
I think we asked them all. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Can I,
know
I'm
we'll be
sorry.
seeing you again.
Oh, sorry. And I know we're in a hurry and I can't stay late today. So I just been thinking a lot about I just want to make sure that this is what the board means so we've said we cannot make any changes to the 25-26 school year. And I understand why and want to be sensitive to people's jobs. I'm thinking about all the other industries. Like I will use myself, my own company. When we were in a position like this, we did layoffs that gave like a month's notice. And so what we're saying here is we are choosing not to do, say, layoffs in the 25-26 school year, maybe with the choice to not give raises. Like I want to make sure we are clear on these are the choices that we're making. Because I know you've said we can't change the 25-26, but two districts just made reductions in the middle of their school year. And I
think I agree with you 100%. What we tried to present as a timeline is considered best practice, and I did try and explain it that way because of the promises made. And I think it's responsive a little bit to some of the feedback we got from parents around SAE and changes and what kind of notice provisions. But you're absolutely right. You could make a different choice. And it's well within the board's purview and right to say, no, we're not going to authorize this budget. You need to make adjustments to reduce spending by X, and you could absolutely do that right now.
Well, and I don't know if we need to do that right now, but I want to make sure that that's what we're saying as a board. Yeah.
And I have a question about that. And I haven't reviewed our RIF language, but in the past, if you were going to RIF people by contract, you had to do it in advance of the next school year. You couldn't do it in the middle of the year. I don't know if that's changed. I just know when I got RIFed, they had to give me another job because they didn't tell us in time.
Yeah.
And so it went to a mediator who said, you didn't follow the contract, you have to give these teachers jobs.
So I don't have the RIF language right in front of me. I know that we've been talking about the RIF language, and I believe this year we've updated with them. So I'll let Dr. Kim jump in here in a minute. But I want to reiterate something Brenna just said. If you all want to make a decision and say to us, reduce this to this amount, and we will adopt a budget only with this level of deficit projected spend, or balance it, I will follow the direction of the board and work on that. I will also say that while Adams 12, for example, made announcements about the reductions when they actually made the reductions, I think it was March, they had been working on that probably since January, late January. So, it takes a minute to make these kinds of difficult decisions, and it's just like Roth's, phase 1. We had no timeline. And so I put together a plan with the team. We all put it together and said, these are the schools. We have no more runway left, and we cannot have a conversation around, do you like this or not? If the board were to make a decision today that we needed to have a balanced budget or a budget of less expenditure than what we have here, it will cause us to go back and make some executive decisions without the type of engagement that I believe is contemplated by our district and organizational values. And there are tensions in all this, right? The financial health and well-being of this organization, as presented when we discussed, for example, our Moody's rating, right? That's real. It's likely going to drop. The financial health and well-being of our employees, based on our individual employees, how much salary we can give, how much of the increase in insurance costs they will have to assume. That's real. And so that, I don't think there's a right answer. I think it is an important conversation for the board to have. And we are willing to give you time and space to have that conversation and for the board to give us direction. But one of the things I do know is we need to adopt a budget for this organization by June 12th. And so we need direction soon.
I also think, it does impact, though, negotiations right now, because I do think that people aren't understanding always that some of the compensation decisions that we're making now are going to impact how many RIFs come down the road. And you guys know, because I've said this multiple times, that I do not want to put us in a position where I'm forcing RIFs that we don't have to have. But just right now in this moment and for this budget, I don't know how the language impacts that, even if we were going to do that.
Currently, the language says for each semester, if you were going to make RIFs, there would have to be extenuating circumstances in the fall, and you would have to let JCEA know by November 1 or in the spring by April 1. Unless there were some extenuating circumstances, typically meaning that unanticipated change in revenue, that we couldn't make it work, that type of language is in there. But the general standard operating procedure that's in our contract right now says April 1. And Superintendent Dorland was correct in that we are currently negotiating that language right now because they do anticipate the potential for some of this action to have to be taken coming up on our runway. And so there is proposed language on the table right now within the RIF article to indicate an interest in being collaborative and being able to be a part of conversations, much like Superintendent Dorland talked about earlier this afternoon.
And any cuts would be implemented for the fall, regardless of this, what you're just saying. Let's say we had extenuating circumstances. It's not like today you lose your job. We would be talking about the budget for next year, so those cuts, we'd be giving employees 4 months notice. That's what I'm trying to ask.
Most contract start dates are around August 16th. So from decision to approximately August 16th. Now, that's not true for principals. Principals start sooner. And of course, we have quite a few year-round employees.
Yeah, I would just say we have been taking direction related to board interest over the last several years around investment in our employees, right? And creating budgets and making decisions and offers at the bargaining table related to that direction. This proposed budget reflects that direction. And it wouldn't be the first time that we, as a cabinet team, pivot quickly. I remember in this, late spring of 2022, when the board said we want demographic and enrollment data and program data posted about every elementary school before we consider which ones to close. And in a matter of 8 weeks, this team came together and came up with a public-facing dashboard with all of that information. And so we can pivot quickly. We will always be willing to work hard to meet the board's expectations. And if the board gives us direction to shift into budget reductions right now for the 25-26 fiscal year, it's very different direction than what we have heard from the board prior to today.
I would just want to say my interest in that is for the same direction of employee supports, because I would rather be able to give raises. And so what I'm saying is that the two choices are really hard. I would rather go towards a direction of reductions to give better employee compensation. So for me, it's the same value of supporting our employees. I know that might be hard to understand when we say we're trying to do a force reduction, but for me, it's so that we can offer better compensation for our employees. So I just want to be clear that that value, I think, stays the same.
I would really want to hear from our associations on that. Just because I remember when we went through the Great Recession, the association sent out a survey to members and said, do you want us to reduce your compensation or should we reduce positions? Ultimately, we chose to reduce our compensation rather than reduce positions. I can also tell you that that is costing me dearly and will for the rest of my life. So, you know, I would want to hear what our associations have to say about that.
Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item will allow the Board of Education to hear the superintendent's recommendation on Free Horizon Montessori School's charter school conversion application. I want to take the opportunity to thank Free Horizon Montessori for the time and effort they put into completing this application, and also to members of the DAC subcommittee who reviewed the application. Those materials are available in this agenda item for the public's review. Before I turn it over to the presenters, is there anything you'd like to say, Superintendent Dorland?
Thank you, President Parker. Welcome. It's so nice to see you all here. I want to thank our district team, Dr. Adiko, and others who have worked so closely with the school team on figuring out what the best approach is to make sure that Free Horizon Montessori School can get what it needs into the future. I also want to make a public statement that I have had the opportunity to work with board members and leadership at Free Horizon Montessori through several needs, including principal selection. And I just want to say it's always been a joy to work with you. I always feel like the school has come to the table with a collaborative spirit and an interest in partnership. And I want to say thank you for that. So welcome, and I'm looking forward to the board hearing about this proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Engels.
Thank you, Superintendent Orland and board. We're excited to be here this afternoon. I'm going to turn over the presentation to Dr. Adiko. As Superintendent Orland was saying, she has been instrumental in working with the school to develop this next part of the process. So I want to turn it over to Dr. Adiko.
Thank you, Mr. Engels. So Free Horizon Montessori's governing board has submitted an application to the Jeffco board requesting to convert the school, which currently operates as a Jeffco option school with innovation status, to an independently operated charter school. And the superintendent has reviewed the application and prepared this recommendation for your review and consideration. So a little bit about Free Horizon Montessori. The school opened as a charter school in 2002 over at 581 Conference Place in Golden. And in 2018, they converted to a Jeffco option school with innovation status, and at the same time moved into the facility that was formerly Pleasant View Elementary. The school currently operates under an innovation plan and a separate governance agreement that was signed between Jeffco, the district, and the Free Horizon Montessori board. And that governance agreement delegates many of the responsibilities of operating the school to the Free Horizon Montessori governing board. And that includes determining faculty and staff salary schedules, managing and evaluating the school leader, and maintaining the school's preschool license, including setting the preschool tuition rates. The school does not operate under student-based budgeting. Rather, the district allocates 88% of the per pupil revenue received directly to the school, to the governing board, and the governing board manages that budget. In the 2023-24 school year, the district reached out to the Free Horizon Board and notified them of some interest in making some changes to the governance agreement. And through lots and lots of discussion, the Free Horizon Board then notified the district in June 2024 of their intent to apply for charter status, which was something that, an option that had been laid out in the governance agreement. And then we wanted to note that the application looks different than our standard new school application. We differentiated the application for Free Horizon Montessori given its current status as a highly functional operating school in the district. And so what we did in the application is we focused on the elements that were specific to charter schools, as well as asking the school to reflect on its current performance. Oh, and before I go on, I would like to introduce the folks at the table, which is, actually, yeah, I'll let you introduce. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Dawnetta McDonald. I'm the principal at Free Horizon. I've been with the school for 17 years as a teacher, instructional coach, assistant principal, and principal now for 3 years, first year interim. And both of my children have gone to Free Horizon. My daughter and I started there together, and she is now 20, and she's graduating from Red Rocks next week. And this is my some members of my board.
I'm John Frost, Free Horizon Montessori Board President. I've got 2 children there and been president for 3 years and on their board for 6 years. So kind of stepped in just as Free Horizon was becoming a Jeffco Option School of Innovation, having stepped away from its charter status. And here I am on the other side.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Christy Kibler. I am the current vice president of the Free Horizon Board. I was just reelected to another 3-year term and am expecting to step into the president's role as of our June board meeting. But I have 2 kids at Free Horizon. We've been there for 4 years now, and we just love the school. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So here's the application timeline. The Free Horizon Board submitted the application on February 1st. Since then, we've been doing the district application team review, which concluded with an applicant capacity interview on April 10th, and members of the DAC Charter Subcommittee were invited to the interview and also asked questions of the applicant at that time. Here we are presenting the superintendent's recommendation, and then you will vote on the application on May 29th, and there's also an opportunity for public comment at that time. And if the application is approved by the board, then the school will open as a Free Horizon Montessori Charter School in August 2026. Additionally, the DAC also conducted their review as granted by statute. The DAC Charter Subcommittee met on March 31st and then presented their recommendation on to the larger DAC on April 15th. And the DAC has presented a majority and dissenting opinions, which have been uploaded to board docs for your review. So a little bit about the applicant. Free Horizon Montessori Charter is a Montessori school, as shared, operating since 2002. They currently serve ECE through 8 and will serve that at full build. Their projected year 1 enrollment is 398 students with an anticipated enrollment growth pattern up to 442 students. And the school will continue to operate in its current facility at in the former Pleasant View facility. And here is a map of their enrollment. They grew by 11 students from 23-24 to 24-25 and anticipate by 29-30 being at 442 students. And that's including their early childhood program. So now we'll go to the district review team's findings. Our review team consisted of representatives from the school leadership team, financial services, and an external consultant who specializes in charter school authorizing. And our review is in three parts: education program, organizational health, and financial health. So for the educational program, the review team found that the applicant had a clearly defined mission, vision, and core values that they currently operate under at their facility, and that these things will continue as they become a charter school or return to being a charter school. We also found that the school maintains its commitment to the Montessori model, but it also supplements with other curricular materials where necessary. And looking at their academic performance historically, they have continuously met or exceeded expectations on the state school performance framework. And we wanted to note that they showed strong middle school math growth in 2024. One area of growth identified by the review team is the low academic performance for students eligible for free and reduced lunch. For organizational health, the district application review team found that the school has a strong governing board in place, and in the applicant interview and in the application, the board was able to describe how it will transition from an option school with innovation status to a charter school, including demonstrating a clear understanding of their key roles and responsibilities. The school has had stable leadership in recent years. However, they have seen decreased teacher retention over time, and they are planning on addressing this through salary adjustments for the 25-26 school year. Currently, as an innovation school with their governance agreement, they set their own teacher salaries, and depending on where you are in the steps and lanes, it can be lower than what Jeffco currently offers district managed schools. And the board recognized that and discussed that in the application and talked about ways that they're working to adjust teacher salaries. And the school also included clear enrollment targets and rationale for their enrollment projections. And then finally, financially, the school has had strong financial performance over the years. They currently have a significant cash balance of approximately $1.4 million. As an innovation school, they have the 4% carry forward kind of limit waived for them, so they've been able to sustain that their cash balance. And it has been agreed upon with the district that we will transfer that their carry forward over to the Free Horizon Montessori Charter Board once they open as a charter. And we found that their submitted budget does balance without tapping into their reserves, but there were a few cost assumptions that we would like the school to address. The first is that we have a new charter fee model. The school was directed to budget under our old model because it wasn't finalized at the time of their application submission. But now that our new model is finalized, there will be some changes there. Our financial services team also believes that their budgeted risk management and insurance costs might be under budgeted, especially when comparing what similarly sized Montessori charters pay for insurance costs. And then there were also some questions on the review team if their enrollment growth is feasible, growing by 50 students by 29-30, given the declining enrollment trends across the district. So after considering that body of evidence, the superintendent has prepared the following recommendation, which is that the Jeffco Board of Education votes to approve the Free Horizon Montessori Charter application with the following three conditions. And the conditions address some of the concerns that we just shared in this presentation. The first is that the Free Horizon Montessori Board submit a revised budget that meets district expectations, including a contingency budget in case the school isn't able to grow to 442 students, that the school then gets some estimates on risk management and insurance coverage costs for a 400-plus Montessori school, and update their budget accordingly. And now that we have recently finalized our charter fee model, if they could update their budget to reflect that. The second recommended condition is that the school by October 1st submits their final enroll Jeffco priorities, ensuring that all the current students for 25-26 have a seat at Free Horizon Montessori Charter in 26-27 when they open. And then finally, because much of this recommendation was based on the school's strong historical academic performance, just one more condition that if they were to receive a rating other than performance on the 2025 SPF, that they would use the UIP submitted in the fall to include a remedy plan to increase achievement in case that were to happen. And then here are the next steps. You will vote on this application at the May 29th meeting, where there will also be opportunity for public comment. And then if the application is approved by the Jeffco board, we will immediately begin contract review. And then also, because they will be staying in a district facility, we will also initiate facility use agreement review. And then by September, we will finalize contract negotiations, and the contract will come back to you, the Jeffco board, for your approval and signatures. And then we'll send the contract to CDE so that the State Board of Education can approve waivers to state policy. And then throughout 25-26, that will be Free Horizon Montessori Charters year 0. And so that will be some planning on the school side, but also on the district side. So for all the current staff who decide to stay at the school and as Free Horizon Montessori Charter, there are some HR implications to that, because that means they will be moving from Jeffco as their employer to Free Horizon Montessori Charter as their employer. So we'll have a meeting with their staff to discuss some of the implications and processes, such as their benefits, the personal leave time, para implications, and so on. And then in August 2026, Free Horizon Montessori Charter School will open. Any questions for us or for the Free Horizon folks?
Well, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for being here. And I know this is a lot of work that goes into these applications, so we appreciate you going through that process. And maybe this is for Dr. Odico. So when we have a year 0, the school is still functioning as the option school during that year 0, right?
Yes, the school will function under its current innovation plan and the governance agreement for 25-26 as a Jeffco option school with innovation status.
Perfect. And then do y'all have any feel for how many of your staff may choose to go into a Jeffco school? Are you anticipating you're going to need to do some hiring prior to the opening as a charter?
Well, I believe we're already, if there is a transition that is needed, I believe some of those teachers are already making that decision now, which I fully understand, and they were very transparent. But I would like to add, we have already updated our salary scale for the coming school year, and based on that, we have already gone to a 96% retention rate for our lead teachers, which is a huge increase from our previous one, including teachers who had left for 1 year and now they're applying to come back. So I believe that transition, we've already seen it this year, and our staffing, and last year when we started this charter process. So I think this current retention rate is a better reflection of how it's going to look.
That's great. Thank you.
I would like to know, in 2018, when you made the decision to go from charter to innovation, can you give me, from your perspective, a little more of your reasons?
So at the time when we were at 581 Conference Place, I mean, it met our needs for a long time, and it was a lovely location, but we were outgrowing it very quickly. And as you know, now that there are district offices over there, it doesn't have a gym. It doesn't have a commercial kitchen. We were having to cater in meals and all those types of things, and it just wasn't meeting the growth needs of our community anymore. So our then principal at the time started working with Dr. Glass and having this conversation of his desire to add innovation option to the portfolio for Jeffco, and really us needing just a larger space. Our playground at the time is what is the parking lot there now. It wasn't much different. And we really at Pleasant View, we have our nice big grass field, we have our gym, we have our commercial kitchen, because we want to participate with things that we can provide free breakfast and lunch for students. So that was really the draw in what started that whole negotiation.
Thank you. And my experience with Montessori schools, they love their format, and they love everything about it. So are you anticipating, or let me ask this question. So you didn't go to innovation status because you wanted to change any programming or anything in the instruction. So are you anticipating that when you're successful in getting back into the charter field, that you'll have the same programming that you had or still have? You never changed that?
Yes, that's the intent. Mhm.
And just one question for Dr. Adiko, I guess. If the recommendation is to have the conditions, as you mentioned, what is the status if conditions are not met? What happens?
Do you want me to take that, Attorney Tollison? The status.
Busted, I was answering an email. Tell me the question.
The status for the application review if the conditions aren't met.
Oh, well, the conditions are really, they are literally a condition precedent to the approval being valid. So the charter contract would be void at that time because it's as if the application was denied.
Mean closing the school or keeping it in innovation status?
It could mean a whole host of things, including going back and negotiating another strategy or another timeline or another arrangement, but would it have to come back to you for approval on that? It could mean continuing as an innovation school, although the innovation plan is in need of significant updating, which is one of the reasons we sort of wound up here in the first place. So it would be a little bit of a back to the drawing board, but they would continue operating in the meantime.
Just to add to that a little bit, some of the conditions, like looking at the UIP and all of those types of things, I believe when we transitioned from charter to innovation option, one of the reasons it was a good partnership, we follow the rules and we comply and because we think it's best practice. So all those types of things are things that we did as a charter with assessments, with our UIP, with our budgeting. So when I see those recommendations, I don't see that as a challenge because it's something that we would have done before when we were a charter.
Well, thank you for your collaboration and ongoing communication with district staff. I'm just going to mention here that the DAC approval for the application had both a majority opinion and a dissenting opinion, with about 6 or 7 people signing on to that dissenting opinion. And I'm curious if you have any response to those folks who had raised concerns that there might not be a value add by having this become a charter, and that the motivation is purely financial. I just want to see if you have a response to that.
Yes. So I do believe it just, from my perspective, because I was present at that DAC meeting when the letter was read, I think it's just kind of a misunderstanding of the intention. Really, when we look at one of the big differences that made us go ahead and decide to return to charter, it had to do with our preschool program. Jeffco really wanted to take our preschool program under their license, and our concerns were, if you're acquainted with Montessori and the pedagogy, really having that preschool primary program, you'll hear it called Children's House in some other schools, is like the foundation. And we have to have a lot of different waivers and things in place to run our preschool program the way that aligns with the model, and it was just too fearful for us to relinquish that license, that we might lose our Montessori component, and really, while there were maybe a few other things, and you guys can chime in as well, I would say that was really the deciding factor. And honestly, some of the things that were listed in the dissension letter don't reflect that that really is truly the thing. We weren't trying to turn into some moneymaker.
Thank you.
It's a costly model. That is why sometimes our salary scales look different, because our teachers have to have a classroom assistant, because it is ability-based instruction. And that's a bit of the compromise, is that you are not just the only adult in there running the Montessori model.
Right. So it sounds like the charter option gives you more accessibility to a clearer waiver request process, especially when it comes to preschool, your preschool program. Does that sound accurate?
I think that's reasonable, and I think just ensuring that, without knowing kind of maybe the district plans for what that would look like if they held our licensure, I think that just felt a little too risky to us.
Okay. Appreciate it.
I just want to throw in there, I don't know if DAC realizes that, and maybe they do, I wasn't there for their deliberation, that there were other reasons too, in terms of just the structure that's currently there being that sort of somehow straddling the option school, charter school, and it was just awkward and it wasn't working well structurally for the district or for Free Horizon. And the idea was to get a structure that is a little more typical and therefore more clear.
I want to follow that up and say, I think I described that also at the DAC meeting. And do we currently have any other innovation school models operating in Jefferson County?
No, Free Horizon Montessori is the only school with an innovation plan in Jeffco.
Okay. So with this move, we would be out of the innovation school game. And is the innovation school parameters or model one of the reasons why it was unclear? I mean, help me understand charter versus innovation a little bit.
I think this is a very good question. Director Kenworthy, I have had the opportunity in multiple districts to work closely with district managed schools, charter schools, and go through the process of supporting schools with becoming innovation, right? Becoming innovation status. Based on that experience, I would say that in Jeffco there is confusion and misconceptions about what innovation with a capital I through the statute process means. And of course, like in every district, there are different relationships and perceptions of charter versus district schools. I mean, it is what it is. And so, and I do believe that the innovation model can be beneficial in a lot of different circumstances, but I also believe that it needs to be done with clarity, with understanding of purpose, and with staff commitment and collaboration to that model. And I don't know that Jeffco has had the experience an opportunity to really educate stakeholders about what the innovation model is intended to do. And we definitely don't have we haven't had clear guidance on how you become an innovation school and why you would consider doing that. It's something that Ms. Tollison, myself, Ms. Adiko, Dr. Adiko, and others have had conversations about, but we have not been able to really do much with it. There really hasn't been a reason to do much with it, but the innovation model is, I think, misunderstood. And if there are opportunities for us to lean into it in the future, I think we have some work to do to help people understand what it is and what it's for.
Thanks. I think that is helpful, just because I think that this change could seed a conversation about that. And so I wanted to just get a little bit of clarity prior to us seeing the transition occur. I want to thank you for your presence at the DAC meeting. I appreciated having you there. And I also want to just thank the DAC for their thoughtful consideration of an application and for allowing there to be dissenting opinions and a majority opinion. I think it honors the voice of the folks who showed up to work on that committee. And anyway, I just think the process went great. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, the board will now receive an update on the proposed 2025-26 Board of Education Advisory Committee appointments prior to board vote at its May 29th, 2025 regular meeting. Jeffco Public Schools Board Advisory Committees are established by the Board of Education to bring together community voices and expert insights on key topics like finance, technology, capital planning, and accountability. These committees are composed of parents, staff, community leaders, and professionals who work together to support the board's decision-making process and ensure our schools serve our community effectively. While we will make appointments on May 29 where there are vacancies, we will continue to appoint members throughout the year, which I think was a very good change in our process. This year, our committees have been professionally facilitated by staff from the Keystone Policy Center. In particular, Trace Faust and Renee Fagan. They have worked with our community leaders towards the recommendations we are receiving today. Before I turn it over to the presenters, is there anything you'd like to say, Superintendent Dorland?
Yeah, I mean, I know we've had, hi, welcome. Thank you, President Parker. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work you do on our committees. And thank you to the Keystone Group for the facilitation this year. We have had conversations over the last few meetings, and I know a lot of feedback from our stakeholders around contracted services and professional services. I just would like to highlight that I think Keystone stepping in as facilitators of the board committees has been a positive investment. It has allowed district staff to serve as subject matter experts and less in the navigation of the meeting, which I greatly appreciate. And I think it really has helped our committees make sure that we're hearing all voices. So thank you for that. In addition, it has added capacity to our teams such that we are able to improve processes like application to these committees, communication about the application process, getting more people applying and interested. What does it mean to be on these committees? Why do we want you to be on these committees? So I just want to highlight that I do believe having you all partner with us from the Keystone Group has been very beneficial, and looking forward to the board studying this so that you all can make some decisions about your committee makeup and new members going into next year.
Thank you. Thank you to the board, and thank you to Superintendent Dorland. Trace Faust, the Keystone Policy Center. Nice to see you all again twice in 1 week. Lucky me. I'm just going to give a couple of things before we get going. I have a few points of gratitude that I want to share out loud. One is for you all first as the board. You know, I've worked with a lot of boards in districts and also a lot of committees and commissions in the legislature and just a lot of really fun, sticky things. And what I really appreciate about y'all in the committee process is that it just feels really clear that this is a value add for you as a board and that you are positioning these committees. And I know it's been an iterative process of learning something one year and trying to do it better the next year and those sorts of things. But I think these are really valuable committees, and I feel like I feel that from you all. And so just as someone who's a third party in this, I just really appreciate a governing board that's looking to community in this way and uplifting those voices. So thank you all for continuing to find ways to do that. The second is I want to give a shout out and gratitude to Superintendent Dorland and to her Chief of Staff, Lisa, who had the idea to bring in us as facilitators kind of in service of what Superintendent Dorland just said around finding ways to uplift district as content experts, but also give community the space and the time and the board to be able to wrestle through some of these things without some of those lanes being a little muddied. And I really appreciate that they've given myself and Rennie the runway to do that with integrity with community members and with our chairs and with our board liaisons. I feel a lot of just honest runway to be able to have those meetings and have those conversations and be beholden to community in that, and I really appreciate that. So thank you guys for that. And the third is just the members of the community, and especially my chairs here, and the folks that make up these committees. You know, just like you all, they're volunteers, and they really dig in. I do the DAC and the TDPAC, and as you all know, the DAC is it's a big committee and it's a lot, right? And they even keep asking, what else can we do? How can we be helpful? And you know, as a parent to a 2.5-year-old, I hope that my kid can be a Jeffco student in a district where other parents are looking out for the best interest of my kid in the way that I feel like DAC and TDPAC, and I know the other committees are as well. So just a lot of gratitude, and we've really done, I think, a bang-up job of getting the right folks on these committees, and so look forward to these new recommendations as well. So with that, I'm going to jump into kind of our process, and then I'm going to hand it over. We're going to switch up our order a little bit. Jason's got a jet here, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview. A number of you have seen these materials, so just as a quick reminder of kind of where we are today. There was a huge outreach effort this year, and I really appreciate the district's partnership and just getting the word out through their traditional channels and some additional new channels. And so total applications to date, and this, again, I know that the applications continue to be open, but we had to cut it off at some point for the purposes of this conversation. We had 32 with DAC, 7 with FAC, 11 with TDPAC, and 3 with Capital Assets CAC. When we get into FAC, there were some people that said, hey, I'm open to being on FAC, but I prefer DAC. And so they actually only ended up reviewing 4 applicants. So I just want to name that. So if you hear a discrepancy in the numbers, it's because someone said, if I'm on DAC, that's where I want to be. So if they were accepted with DAC, then that's where they stayed. Second piece is just a reminder of like what we were keeping in mind criteria-wise as far as how we were selected. And Danielle, I know we'll see you online. Is that correct? No, it's nice to see you. So thank you. No apologies. Yeah, that sounds great. You've heard some of this, so we'll catch you right in time. So criteria for recruitment effort and recommendations. One is just representation around Jeffco is an incredibly diverse district, and we know that there are families and kids that are in a variety of situations, and we want to have diversity in those experiences as much as possible. And we also know that we are not able to always do that. So that was the first and foremost the effort. Second is around the lived experience. So folks that have experience, whether it's as past parents, alumni, staff, engaged community members, et cetera. Of course, first and foremost on the DAC, the big focus is on parents, but we also know that there are a variety of stakeholders for a variety of reasons, and so trying to be in tune with that. Perspective and voice. So we know that there's, again, a lot of sticky topics. We aim for a balance of opinions, especially around the top of the committees we'll be discussing. So really in our applications, looking for folks that are understanding of that and recognizing that we're not here to grind a specific axe. We are here to make Jeffco better and a continuous learning process. So appreciate that in those applicants. Productive approach, again, respectfully in dialogue, willingness to work towards consensus. Were they able to kind of express that in their applications? Availability, we want folks that show up, that say they can be there, and then they will show up, whether it's online and in person. We also recognize we're trying to differentiate people's abilities to be at these meetings, so we have offered different ways for them to engage. And then alignment on some of these committees, particularly the finance and facilities, and in the technology data privacy, we need folks that understand what we're talking about, because really I know that you all are counting on community members that have that expertise, and so we really took a fine-tooth comb and looked at that expertise and really thought about that, particularly for those 3 committees. So just as a reminder of the timeline, and then we're going to get into each of the committees, and Jason, I'll start with you. The first is that Keystone. So this is a little bit a different thing, and the reason is we wanted to elevate kind of the autonomy of the committees themselves. So Keystone came in with that initial review just from a purely technical aspect of like, are these people who they say they are they qualified as far as like members or who they say they are, et cetera. Second is that it then went to the committee and the chairs. And so some of our committees are so small that they kind of consolidated the committee review with the district liaison review. But first and foremost, that the districts felt that the committees felt like they had the autonomy to really go through those with their perspective. And then where appropriate, the district liaison review. So I'll give you the example in DAC. We did follow this to a T because DAC has a big enough committee that they were able to review those first and foremost with their executive committee. The district liaison really served as just an advisor, and also really appreciate the district folks, and particularly Grease on DAC, who was able to really pull all the information for all these people and do some of that digging for us. So I know Teresa will give a shout out there as well. And then here we are today, May night study session. Really want you all to be able to ask questions. I know you've seen these applications ahead of time, and then May 29th, we're hopeful that you feel comfortable enough to put it to vote. All right, so with that, we're just going to go committee by committee. Jason here with the Finance Committee has to leave here shortly, so he's going to go first. So why don't we do your quick overview and then questions for that, and then we'll go through the rest of the committees.
Perfect. Thank you all. Good to see you all again. Appreciate the time, and I would concur with the meetings. I've been a part of the FAC since October, November. Rennie been running those meetings along with the district, of course, and it's it's been enjoyable, insightful, learning complexities, as I've said before, but it's been great to have a coach to get us through the process. So that's been very good. In our last meeting, we did review with the FAC. As you can see, we had a fairly limited number of applications, so it was a pretty quick review for us all, and we have settled in on the 3 that have been provided to you at this point. I think they, of the applications that we have reviewed, they had the right mix of education, work experience, time in the market, and Jeffco concerned parents. So I think they're checking a lot of boxes that you had stated in your initial statement there. And I think that, from what we can see on paper, that these would be good contributors that have dealt with some complex, large enterprise types of business needs that I think will translate well within the committee.
So I'll open it up for questions, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say I was there at the meeting when you guys were looking over the applicants or discussing them. I appreciate your position on that. I thought we had good applicants, and I just have to point out that there was a discussion as to whether an applicant had used AI for their resume or for their cover letter or whatever, and I just want to put it out there because I think we might be seeing more and more these days of those AI-generated applications. But thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rennie Fagan with the Keystone Policy Center and do facilitate both the FAC and the CAC. And that person was not recommended, but as for a lot of reasons, the committee filled, sticking with the fact for a second, the committee filled the number of seats available, and there was just some discussion of having an alternate in case somebody went off during the year. So that was good, but thank you for pointing that out, Director Parker, Chairman. So on the CAC, there were 3 applications. The committee recommended 2. One is an electrical engineer that is also a project manager, has worked in design and construction for 25 years on many public buildings, including schools, and is a lifelong resident of Jeffco, lives in the Arvada area. And the other is also an architect and a project manager who had served on the district's construction management team and now is not, of course, with the team, but working on a project with another school district in the metro area. And there was some discussion among the group about that person serving, and the current staff felt that would be good additions. So those are the 2 that, and that person lives in the Golden area. So those are the 2 that have been recommended.
So let's pause there just because I want to be able to give Jason any questions, particularly around the Finance Committee before. Okay.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much, Jason. I'll pause for the capital assets. Any questions there?
I'll just say thank you. I always appreciate how you run the meetings. I'm sure like many committees, have a tendency to get off track. And so I always appreciate you bringing us back and just don't get the opportunity to say it very often. So thank you. And thank you for thinking really thoughtfully about how we can add to the expertise in that group.
Thank you very much.
I have a quick question, if I can.
Oh, yeah.
Is that okay? I'm so sorry, because here I am online now. And I think I missed this while I was gone. But if someone was not applied for multiple committees and was not accepted, are all the committees full? Was the FAC full? That's what I missed.
I believe it is at this point. There's 7. There's room for 7.
Okay.
There are currently 4, and 3 have been recommended.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
got
I'll just say too, because once you all vote, then we offer those spots. So there is the possibility. I know in the case of the additional 2 that we have kind of backups, and I believe y'all have alternates as well, so that in the case that someone doesn't accept one of those spots, that we have additional recommendations.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, can we move on to technology data privacy? Okay. This is where Mary and I get to shine and hang out together. All right, so we have 3 recommendations for TDPAC. Really thoughtful dialogue with Aaron Norton, who's the chair now for TDPAC, who also serves on DAC. Couldn't be here today, but really appreciate Aaron's efforts here in trying to shore up kind of what is TDPAC and where are we focused. It's a massive, ongoing, challenging topic that requires a lot, again, expertise. And so really appreciate her leadership there. The three that we have put forward to you all have a variety of experiences and expertise that really became clear once we actually started talking out loud and talking out loud with a number of folks also with the district around some of these priority areas that we see shaping up from the technology and data privacy side. One, I'll just say, of the folks that we recommended, you'll see has quite a bit of district experience, not in Jeffco, but in another district that's actually larger than Jeffco around their technology, and is a Jeffco parent, though, and so they really saw a lot of value in that, of like the district expertise without being a Jeffco employee. Felt really valuable. And then the other two, just having some technical expertise that, quite frankly, is just missing currently on the current TDPAC. So we put out an intent to return, and there was one person retiring and another person that said they weren't returning because they were moving, and then the third person said that, hey, listen, you know, I love being on this committee, but if you have someone that's a little bit more relevant with their expertise, totally understand. And so with that, we did see someone that had a little bit more relevant expertise, and so that's why we have the three recommendations. So any questions with TDPAC?
I just want to say I think TDPAC rocks, and the rest of you should come sometime and listen to them.
TDPAC rocks. Appreciate that. Thanks, Mary. Any other questions, thoughts? All right, on to the deck. Okay, I have our lovely chair here, Therese, who will, for the second time this week, so Therese, really big shout out for making this happen. But I'm going to hand it over to you to give the kind of overview, and we'll kind of talk through a couple of different ideas we have. So go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is the part that I really like. I kind of like numbers and statistics and things like that. So right now, we're a full DAC is 59 members, just so everybody's aware, 59. And I was looking statistically and also per our bylaws, and this is where some of our discussion can come in, but you know, we really try to keep it a pretty heavy parent-led group. So right now, how we have this set up per our bylaws, 47 of the 59 would be parent members. And a parent is parent or guardian of an active, current Jeffco enrolled student. So somebody who's, you know, currently actively enrolled. So that represents 47 of the 59, which is 80%. And then the other 12 positions are open to non-parents well, non-parents. That's really only 4 positions in an at-large capacity. And then there's the appointee positions. So JESPA, JCEA, teachers, and that. Administrators. So there you go, right? So 47 a PTA, that's an appointee, yep. So 47 parent members and 12 being non-parent members. So right now, we received, 32 applications, and we have 17 that we have moved forward, I would say, just speaking plainly, cleanly, right? No questions about them. They're a parent. They've got somebody in the school district. We figured that out. They've a clean application. It's easy. We have, but that still leaves us with vacancies. Right now, 12 vacancies. And we might have 2 more, depending on this discussion, we might have 2 more that we can forward, because I think a discussion came up about, we're trying to keep AARs being parents in that articulation area, right? That's clean, it makes sense. It's a parent member representing that particular articulation area. However, we haven't received applicants from Lakewood or from, well, I mean, I can look and just tell you. From, we have vacancies in Dakota Ridge, we have vacancies in Bear Creek, things like that. So we have, because we haven't received enough applicants to do that now. So that's just kind of talking about that area. Where we also we have 12 applicants, and I know this was a concern. We have 12 applicants who don't have an active student in Jeffco. So we would call them non-parents. Or they're currently employed by Jeffco. And you can't have both positions. Even if you're a parent, you can't be employed by Jeffco and be on DAC in a parent member position. So that's how this all looks, right? We have certainly enough applicants to fill, however, not in the defined ways by our bylaws and sort of by the history of how we're trying to keep this a majority parent-led group, fully parent-led group. Does that make sense?
So just the clarification I'll add there is, so with the clarification from Julie, and I appreciate that, the last meeting around the policy technically stating like in your best effort, fill these with articulation areas. Going back, we will likely between now and the 29th have between 2 and 5. There's a couple folks we need to still have that grease research on around who they are, but we anticipate between 2 and 5 additional recommendations for you all to then fill additional parent spots that just would not be in the desired articulation areas, but that would be the question for you all is, does that sound like your preference versus holding those spots open and just hoping that, throughout the year that's...
I like you doing that. I guess I'm questioning because some of the schools, like I have Chatfield, I think had one opening, a couple of them anyway. So I'm just wondering if I know some people that I could say, there seems to be an opening, but if there are some that you think you may move in there, I don't want to go get somebody if there's not going to be a spot.
Yeah, so the way that, and I'll just say just from a process side, the way that would happen is they would just kind of go almost like they'd be in that parent area, but that we wouldn't assign them to an articulation area. So that spot technically is still vacant. So what we'll do is we'll just come back to you and say, here's 4 recommendations for additional parents that don't fit neatly into the articulation areas. That leaves you 6 vacancies. So if you still have a vacancy in your articulation area, please help us fill that. But it'll just be it just depends on kind of a first come, first served. Does that make sense?
So it doesn't quite make sense to me. So
Okay.
we would let, sorry.
I got you.
So we would say, hey, we still have some openings.
Mhm.
We're going to let a few more parents in, which is great, so we're getting more community. But we're also holding the vacancies, so could you end up with more than 59 people, or did I miss math?
Yeah, not holding the vacancies. I just, to be clean on this, you're going to have a certain amount of vacancies, and you can plug those with parents however you see fit, right? I'm just saying that from an articulation areas perspective and keeping diversity on the DAC, we will just let you know where there is still no representation. And so with the vacancies, but we're gonna send you more recommendations that are just parents that might already have representation in those articulation areas, but the policy does not preclude or exclude additional parents from being on there just because they don't fit that particular articulation area.
Got it. So let's say you send us this amazing slate, we rigorously support them.
Right.
And then like August 1st, 2 amazing Lakewood parents step up and they're like, I'm in.
Yep.
They could still come in and it wouldn't displace any of the folks that we appointed.
Totally, assuming there's just still general vacancies, which there likely will be.
Okay, so
So,
there's that
yeah.
assumption though. So we would have to ensure that we had, sorry guys, I know I'm belaboring.
No, you're good.
I just want to make sure we don't get ourselves in a position, because I'm all for if we have people who want to volunteer. I know we need to get people at these meetings because that community voice is so critical, and DAC is one of our best avenues to get that. I just want to make sure we don't like bring people in and then have people want to do those vacancies and not be able to put folks in those articulation areas in those vacancies.
So I'll say right now, you have 11 vacancies,
Okay.
and at max, you have 5 additional people coming to you. So I don't think you're going to be running into that, but I think when we come back to you throughout the year with any additional recommendations, we will just remind you of where your representation might be lacking, and you can make the call then. But between now and the 29th, that's not going to be an issue because there are way more vacancies than there are actual applicants.
Well,
If
and
that makes...
Can I
then-
just add
Yeah.
that throughout the year, then you have people who have said yes, who will leave. So this is like a snapshot in time, and so yeah, that will probably continue to be the case.
Yeah, I'd say it's not a perfect process, but because we're working with kind of a moving...
Flexible.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think you're going to run into that right now, just from my opinion. because I think you have enough vacancies, and then we'll just update you each time there's any sort of additional, to say, hey, you've got, your example, you've got 2 Lakewood parents that want to apply. Let's say Lakewood's already full. I'll just let you know that, and then you can make the call based on your vacancies.
May I ask 2 more questions? Damn it. I'm asking 2 anyway. Are there any situations where we had folks that wanted to stay on that did not stay on or did not be recommended to stay on?
No.
Okay. And then are there specific charter school ARs, or are they built into the articulation areas that their charter is associated with?
There's specific charter school AARs. There's 3 openings, and we'll have 1 vacancy.
Is that on our list? Because I didn't see that, and that's why.
It is on this. It is on the second page of that chart. I will say that there's. I think what you meant to say. There's 3 places. There's 1 vacancy. So we have an elementary, a middle, and a high school representation.
Oh, are you talking about AARs or administrations?
I'm looking at this, and
Yep.
I don't see them on here. That's why I'm
So
asking.
I think you got sent. That's just the 1 page.
No, I've got 3 pages, but they're not on here, and that's why I asked the question.
So is page 3 at the very top?
That's our top categories, teachers.
Then it should say underneath that, school administrators. Yeah, sorry. I think we're on the same. Yeah. Yep.
I'm also happy to make sure that we get, it might be a version control or a PDF sort of issue. Sometimes when we change things from Word to PDF, it cuts things off.
May I ask a related question?
Yeah, do you mind if I
Sorry.
just pause real quick and we're just gonna, do you want to just you want to speak to that though, so that you can voice it over?
No, I just want to be, very, very clear. So for articulation area representatives, we have 3 charter school AARs. We have 1 position open. So we already have 2, and they have intended to return. And then we have 1 position open for our charter school AAR. And then for option schools, we have 2 positions, and we will have 1 that we're moving forward and 1 vacancy. So just to be very clear how we break this up, so I'm thinking in roles right now. So there are 17 traditional neighborhood schools, which have 34 AARs. There are charter schools, which have 3 AAR positions, and option schools, which have 2 AAR positions.
So could we get the updated version? I think that would solve a lot of confusion.
Well, she said absolutely not. Yes. We will send that to you right after this, but does that make sense? You have 1 vacancy of the 3.
It feels so much better because
Perfect.
we just don't have it.
And I'm going to request that that we load it into board docs and make sure that it's showing up the right way, because I can understand if our public is looking at this and or our charter schools.
Hey, Trace. Can you all hear me?
Yes, now
Sorry.
we can. Go ahead.
Okay, real quick. I sent you an email with a specific question with names, and I don't want to say names. So I think if you see that, you'll see one of the reasons that I know I had a similar question. So I just want to say I have really specific questions in an email to you that you can see later
Okay.
about this particular topic.
This
Gotcha.
addresses all of my concerns, though.
Okay.
We just didn't see it in this version.
Okay, so Danielle has a question that sounds like you just sent an email. I'll check on that. And then Michelle, you feel good.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that that's sent to you. So it's all there.
Perfect. Yeah,
Perfect.
we just don't
Can
have
I-
that line.
can
I gotcha.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry, just while I have you all. On the issue of the vacancies, and I'd be really in favor of letting folks fill those. I heard you say you'll just present it to us. I did have a question of I think we should be really clear that if someone from that area becomes eligible, then that person might lose that vacant spot. But then I wonder, does that mean they can move into another vacant spot? So I just think, I don't know what the answer is, but I think we have to be thoughtful about how we help people understand, and that they're not just expendable, but, what they get the opportunity to do.
Yeah, totally, Danielle. And because those spots are no longer like by policy regulated to being in one particular AAR area, they don't have to move to any spots. That's all on you to just appoint them. So there's no slots there to like move them around. It's just if there are general vacancies or not, because the policy no longer requires you to fill in only for those AAR areas. So point is your concern there, I think, is wouldn't be an issue because those vacant spots are movable.
So if you're not
Thank you.
in that spot, you're basically at large.
Right.
And
Right.
then, so you don't have to be shuffled around. If there's
Correct.
enough room to put somebody into a vacancy and still keep all the at-large people, we just keep them at large.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Paula. You said it better than I did, so. Okay.
So just to be clear, though, that means we'll have more than 50, we could have a potential. Okay. So if there's vacancies in the at-large area.
Yes. No, in the 34. Just parents.
Okay, let me just be really clear. I need to get my head around this. So we're going to present to you parents, let's say parents who are not in a particular articulation area. We don't have any openings in the at-large area. And extra parents come on. We don't assign them to an articulation area, or we do? We don't.
I'm hearing if we have a vacancy in an area, so let's say somebody shows up and they can do Lakewood because they live there, then we put them in Lakewood. They are not at large. We put them in Lakewood.
Let me step
Yes.
in, because we've struggled with alignment on this for a couple of years now. The old policy, which I think we changed at least 2 years ago, said 2 from each articulation area. And there was a struggle because the articulation area of Jefferson and the articulation of Columbine, for involved parents just differed because of the size of the schools. So, and then last year we had a problem where somebody thought we were still doing this 2 by each area, and we had a parent from, I think, Arvada, I can't remember, who was excluded because Arvada is full. There is no full. There is no, it just says up to 34 parents seek geographic diversity. And so to think about who's in what slot just really isn't what the policy requires. The policy does want us to try to find that broad representation, but that's it. So any tracking of slots should be very informal. And that doesn't make them necessarily at large. We have at large spots too, but that's good for the non-parents, for example. These 34 spots are parents or guardians or whatever.
You got to say that on the record, Therese.
That makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions there? Thanks for sitting in that with us. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, I was just thinking, when you get back to some of the applicants who were not selected, especially the ones who were not parents or not really, did they know in advance, was that pretty clear as they were applying, that there was an emphasis or a wish to have more parents on the DAC, or any of the criteria we used for selection?
Was it clear to applicants?
Yeah.
I believe so, but that's a great question. I think we could ask folks as well for feedback.
Yeah.
And happy to do that. I think the district's communications were pretty clear on what the purpose and role was of these ideally, but of course some of that gets lost in translation, as we know. So when we do the follow-up to folks around, because part of the communication will be about additional opportunities to stay engaged with the district despite not being able to put them on one of these committees, we can also ask for feedback for this particular process.
And I also just want to say what a difference this is from the very first year we were on it. I had no clue, I vote yes on whatever it is. I don't know who it is. I don't know where they're going. It was yes, so much
And
better.
thank you for not doing the meet and greet.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
It was.
We were hoping to be more efficient with your time and also uplift the voices of our lovely committee folks as well. So thank you for working with us on that. This is year 1, so appreciate y'all learning with us.
I want to also appreciate the transparency and having access to the applications and seeing who was there, who got approved. thank you. We never, even with the interviews that we used to do, we would do those and then not know what happened after the fact, and then a slate would be presented to us, and we would go, okay. So this just feels way better. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions here?
Nope.
All right, again, appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Good weekend. All right, and for the last item, the board will discuss the proposed 2025-26 Board of Education calendar prior to board vote at its May 29th, 2025 regular meeting. Board members received the draft calendar last month. It's been published in our weekly board updates several times for our review. At this time, I'd like to open up the forum to board members to share any feedback or questions we have about the proposed calendar. Yeah, I will say it's pretty self-explanatory. As we know, we try to do the study session on a Wednesday, the first Wednesday, and the regular meeting the next Thursday, but sometimes there are things that intervene. Could be a religious holiday or some other event. So those are pretty self-explanatory, and then you'll see some of the MRs in there for monitoring reports. We added in study sessions for those so that we wouldn't have ungodly long meetings in our regular meetings. And if you have any questions, you can ask Kristen, because she was there when we did this. And as always, if we need to modify it, we've done that in the past for different reasons. So if there are no questions, yes.
Mary, I had just one quick thing.
Sure.
Sorry, now I'm in a school lobby, so I'm trying to be quiet. On the January schedule, there's the study session, the board meeting, and then the Friday right after the board meeting, I think. Sorry, I'm kind of trying to remember. I just wanted to say that will probably, even for candidates who are coming onto the board who know there's a first Wednesday and second Thursday meeting, it will probably be a surprise that there's a Friday. So I know sometimes we communicate with candidates about the schedules that will happen immediately after they might get elected. And so we might want to make sure people understand that there's an extra day in January, because it's just so soon.
Yes.
You know?
Yep. So
Okay.
That's good.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mhm. All right. So that brings us to the end of today's agenda. We'll stand adjourned. Our next scheduled meeting of the board is a board meeting scheduled at 3:30 p.m. on May 29th, 2025 at the Ed Center. Have a nice weekend.